What if the crown you wear is forged from regret, each jewel a testament to choices that claw at your sanity? Kings are not born, they are made, and often shattered under the weight of their own hubris. Picture this, a gilded throne, a banquet of betrayal, and laughter echoing in the halls like the hollow chime of a death knell. You think you want power? You think ruling is a game of chess? Wrong. It's a blood-soaked battlefield where every move could lead to your glorious rise or your wretched fall. In the flickering shadows of the castle, whispers coil like smoke around the flickering candles. The jesters, once your trusted advisors, now sharpen knives behind your back, their laughter a sinister symphony. For every king draped in finery, there's 1,000 skeletons rattling in the pantry, secrets festering like rot. What happens when the feasts turn to famine, when the loyal become treacherous and your own reflection is the only company you can trust? Your knightly robes will weigh heavy as regret sinks in, drowning you in a sea of past mistakes. You're a king, yes, but what does that mean when you've sacrificed your soul for a fleeting taste of glory? Your throne is built on the ashes of enemies you crushed, yet they haunt you like a persistent ghost. Imagine waking up every day knowing every decision was a dagger in the heart of someone you once loved. You crave respect, but all you get is the brittle silence of the court, a stage where every glance is a calculated move in a deadly game. Your thirst for power? It's a poison that seeps into your veins, turning allies into foes, and dreams into nightmares. Beware, for the crown is not a crown at all, it's a noose. The whispers grow louder, echoing with the taunts of those you've betrayed. You sit alone in your gilded chamber, staring into the abyss that stares back, reminding you of every shattered relationship, every lost opportunity. You thought you could tame dragons, but they've turned against you, spitting fire into your very soul. What happens when the jesters don't joke? When the throne's gilding starts to tarnish with the rust of regret? Kings are not just rulers, they are prisoners of their own making, locked away in a tower of their own failures. Will you wear your crown proudly, or will the weight of your choices crush you before the first candle is lit for the next feast? You think you know what it means to rule? You think you could survive the treachery that festers within your own castle walls? Or will the irony of your reign be that your kingdom is nothing but a beautiful sepulchre, a resting place for a king who regretted everything? This is not just a tale, it's a grim warning for anyone who believes the throne is a symbol of glory rather than a perilous precipice. Welcome to your new reality. Welcome to your doom. The throne loomed like a dark star, heavy and pulsing with a cold light that invaded the dim hall. King Alaric stood before it, heart racing, each pulse a reminder of the countless voices whispering in his mind. They filled the air with echoes of doubt and fear, a cacophony swirling around him like a tempest. The royal banquet had been a facade of laughter, but beneath the surface, shadows danced, his father's spectre, a ghost of legacy, chilling his spine as he faced the truth. I remember the day I was crowned, he muttered, his breath hitching at the memory of the heavy gold circlet settling upon his brow. The cool metal promised power, but the weight was suffocating. I thought it was glory, a mantle of honor. Now, it felt like chains forged in fire, shackling him to a destiny he never wanted. Across the hall, Lady Seraphine watched him from the shadowed margins, her golden hair a bright halo against the gloom. She had been his anchor, laughter spilling from her lips like sunlight breaking through clouds. But today, her smiles felt like shards of glass, sharp and jagged, cutting through the tension. She was no longer just the charming courtier, she was a tempest, a force of nature, hiding her own storm behind those bright eyes. Alaric, she whispered, her voice barely carrying over the hum of the hall. You can't let them see you falter. They smell weakness. What choice do I have? He clenched his fists, feeling the heat rise within him. Every decision burns. Every word stings. Do they think I'm a god? I bleed like them. Her gaze pierced through the layers of pretense that cocooned them. You're not just a king, Alaric. You're a man. You can be both. But in that moment, the ghosts of his predecessors loomed larger, their specters cloaked in disappointment. Alaric could almost hear their laughter, mocking, deriding his every move. The weight of their legacy pressed against his chest like a boulder. He was not just fighting for himself, he was a vessel for their unfulfilled dreams, their unresolved sins. And then there was Marcus. His childhood friend, now a soldier loyal to the crown but bound by the chains of ambition. Alaric could see him, a figure cloaked in shadows, watching from across the banquet hall, his jaw set tight, fists clenched. Marcus had tasted the thrill of battle, the intoxicating rush of power. "You're too soft, Alaric," he had said once, disdain dripping from his voice. "Emotional men don't survive in this world." The thought crushed Alaric's heart. "I remember our dreams under the stars," he said, almost to himself. "We were going to change the world." "Change requires sacrifice," Marcus had replied, lips curling into a smile that barely reached his eyes. "What are you willing to sacrifice?" The air thickened with unspoken tension, the clock ticking ominously, each second stretching like a taut string ready to snap. The sound echoed, heavy with the weight of decisions yet to be made. Alaric turned to Seraphine, desperation clawing at his throat. "What if I can't carry this weight? What if I crumble?" "Then you must find your strength," she replied, stepping closer, her presence a flicker of warmth amid the icy dread. "You have the power to break the cycle. You can redefine what it means to wear the crown." The shadows around them shifted, closing in, whispers of doubt curling around him. The banquet hall was a theater of masks, laughter masking the fear of betrayal, each noble face a canvas of ambition. He could feel their eyes on him, 1,000 judgments waiting to strike. A sudden crash echoed from the entrance, shattering the delicate tension. The door slammed open, revealing a figure cloaked in darkness, with eyes gleaming like polished obsidian. It was one of the castle guards, breathless and wild. "Your Majesty," he shouted, urgency lacing every syllable. "The rebels are at the gates." Chaos erupted around him. Alaric felt the room dissolve into a murmur of panic, the laughter and feasting replaced by gasps and shouts. He stood frozen, the crown feeling heavier than ever, pressing down on him like a noose. His heart thundered in his ears as he searched for clarity amid the storm. "Alaric!" Seraphine's voice cut through the noise. "What will you do?" Something snapped within him. The weight of the crown shifted, becoming a catalyst for fire rather than suffocation. He straightened, the remnants of fear melting away, replaced by a fierce resolve. "I will not hide. I will face them." As he stepped forward, the voices quieted, uncertainty hanging in the air, thick and tangible. They watched a king rise. Each footfall echoed against the stone, an incantation of purpose. He felt the ghosts hovering behind him, their whispers transforming from taunts to encouragement. Yet as he moved toward the chaos, he caught the shadows of doubt in Marcus's gaze, the flickering embers of their friendship now turned to ash. The soldier's heart had hardened against the vulnerability Alaric embraced. "Not everyone will follow you, Alaric," Marcus warned, the chill of betrayal threading through his words. "But some will," he replied, voice steady, resolute. "I will not be the king they want. I will be the king they need." In that moment, the crown became not just a symbol of kingship but a promise of change, of insight, of humanity. Alaric could feel the warmth of Seraphine's steadying presence beside him, and the weight of the past beginning to shift. The doorways to confrontation lay open, the night pregnant with possibility. The air quivered with anticipation, a cosmic dance of fate and choice swirling around them. Shadows flickered like ghosts, whispering secrets of old, teasing the veil between fear and hope. And as he stepped through the threshold, Alaric took a deep breath, ready to embrace the unknown. The burden of the crown would not be borne alone. It would be shared, challenged, and perhaps, just perhaps, transformed. No matter the outcome, he would face it all head-on, the weight of his humanity igniting the spark for change. The world outside awaited, dark and uncertain, but within him, a fire was igniting, burning away the fear that had once tried to consume him. Let them come, he thought, heart racing, as the night embraced him in its cold, starry arms. He would meet their gaze, and in doing so, he would forge a new destiny, his own. The wind howled through the empty halls of the castle, a mournful wail echoing like a lost soul searching for solace. Shadows danced on the stone walls, flickering with the trembling light of a single torch, and in that dim glow, I could see him, King Edward, hunched over like a broken man, his crown slipping from his brow. It was a night thick with regret, heavy as the air before a storm, and I felt every ounce of his despair wrap around me like a suffocating cloak. I remember the taste of victory, he rasped, the words slipping from his lips like shards of glass, and yet it feels as distant as the stars. His hands trembled as he pressed them against the cold stone, fingers clawing at the ancient mortar, as if hoping to pull himself back to a time when glory was his only companion. But glory had betrayed him, leaving behind the hollow shells of men who had once bowed before him, their lives now symbols of his failures. The echoes of battle still haunted him, the clang of swords and the cries of the dying reverberating in his mind like a relentless drum. How could he have known that the weight of the crown was nothing compared to the burden of blood? I thought I was a king, he whispered, but I was only a butcher, a puppet dancing on strings of greed. I watched him, my heart a heavy stone, as he sank deeper into the abyss of his own making. Outside, the moon hung like a ghostly eye, watching, judging. I could almost hear the whispers of those he had wronged, their voices rising like a chorus of wailing ghosts. Henry, his closest confidant, had fallen in battle, his loyalty repaid with death. Edward's chest tightened at the thought, a visceral pain lancing through him. I remember, he stammered, his voice cracking, the way he laughed, the way he fought for me. Each name was a dagger, a fresh wound that refused to heal. And then there was Isabella, her face blurred by the haze of time but forever etched in his heart. The woman he had loved with a fierce passion, now just a memory wrapped in shadows. He had cast her aside, discarded like the remains of a feast, believing power would fill the void she left. But power was a cruel mistress, it demanded everything and offered only emptiness in return. What is a crown without love, he lamented, the question hanging in the air like an unspoken curse. As he knelt there, the anguish of his choices clawed at him, a relentless beast that would not let him go. The very walls seemed to close in, suffocating him with their silence. I could feel the temperature drop, the chill of regret seeping into my bones. Was this what it meant to be a king? To stand atop the world and yet feel so utterly alone? Across the hall, a flicker of movement caught my eye. There stood Richard, Edward's once favored brother, a man battling his own demons. His eyes were hollow, shadows lurking under the surface, mirroring the turmoil raging within. You think you're the only one who has lost, he spat, his voice dripping with bitterness. You think your burden is heavier than mine. Richard's life had been a series of desperate gambles, every decision a roll of dice that left him more entwined in the web of regret. He had chased glory, too, but found himself ensnared in betrayal and wrath. I remember the nights I spent plotting, the throne always just a heartbeat away. His laughter rang hollow, a mirthless sound that echoed off the stone walls, haunting us both. In that moment, I understood the weight of their shared legacy, a legacy not of triumph, but of sorrow, a tapestry woven with tears and blood. Each brother fought their own war, both outside and within, their shared history a battlefield littered with the corpses of dreams. And yet, they were bound together by an unbreakable thread, their fates intertwined like the roots of ancient trees, digging deeper into the earth, seeking nourishment from the decay around them. Tell me, brother, Edward's voice trembled as he faced Richard, do we ever escape this curse? It was a question that hung in the air, heavy and unanswered, an echo of their shared existence that reverberated in the cold silence of the hall. Richard's eyes flashed with a pain so raw, it was as if he were staring into the abyss of his own soul. I had my chance. We all had our chances, he replied, a bitterness lining his words, each syllable a stab. But we squandered them, didn't we? For what? For power? For a fleeting glory that crumbles like sand beneath our feet. The tension between them crackled like a bolt of lightning, the air charged with unspoken accusations and bottled rage. Each brother, a living testament to the devastation wrought by ambition, realized how intertwined their fates truly were. Kings, yes, but also men, a heart-wrenching duality that made them both noble and tragically flawed. And as I stood in that dimly lit chamber, illuminated only by the flickering torchlight, I could see it all, the ghosts of their past swirling around them, whispering secrets long buried, urging them to confront the truth they so desperately avoided. I felt the weight of history pressing down, the cosmos spinning in an indifferent ballet of stars, while they wrestled with shadows that would forever haunt their dreams. In that moment, it became clear, the legacy of regret was not merely theirs to bear, it was the inheritance of kingship itself. A burden passed from one ruler to the next, an endless cycle of choices made and lives lost, echoing through the corridors of time like the tolling of a distant bell, signaling the end of all things. And as they faced one another, I could see the flicker of understanding, the recognition that they were not alone in their despair. And so, the night deepened, the shadows thickening, as the brothers stood poised on the precipice of confrontation. An emotional climax loomed, a reckoning of the heart, a moment where regret danced dangerously close to redemption, where every heartbeat echoed with the weight of their choices. Time seemed suspended, the very air crackling with anticipation, as they prepared to confront not just each other, but the ghosts of their own making. And in that heavy silence, I held my breath, knowing that the true legacy was just beginning to unfold, a tapestry woven with pain and possibility, and I was powerless to look away. The story was far from over, it shimmered with the promise of what was to come, a haunting melody that would echo long into the night. The clock ticks, the heartbeat against the silence, each second a reminder of the inevitable. The shadows stretch across the cold stone floor, twisting into ominous shapes like dark fingers reaching out, grasping at the edges of sanity. I'm standing in a cramped chamber, the air thick with the weight of unspoken words, the stench of power rotting from the inside out. In the center, Eleanor's eyes blaze with a fierce desperation, a lioness at the brink of losing her pride. "You don't understand," she shouts, voice laced with fury and fear, as if every syllable could shatter the walls closing in around us. "I don't have to understand," William snaps back, his voice cutting through the tension like a dagger. His hands tremble, but not from fear, it's the tremble of authority teetering on the edge of collapse. He wears his power like a crown, but I see it, the cracks beneath the surface, the loneliness that festers in his heart. "I control this," he insists, the words thick with a false bravado that echoes hollow against the stones. "I command loyalty. I am not like you." Eleanor laughs, a brittle sound that bounces against the walls and ricochets back with an eerie resonance. "Loyalty? You think you command loyalty? You are a king without a kingdom, an emperor of nothing but ghosts." Her fingers curl into fists, and I can almost feel the electricity sparking between them, a storm brewing in her heart. "You sit in your tower, William, thinking you're above it all, but you're more alone than I've ever been." The truth hangs heavy in the air, a spectre haunting our thoughts. It's a truth that no one wants to acknowledge, the reality that absolute authority can carve out a soul until it's hollow, a shell that mirrors the very emptiness of power. I watch as her words claw at him, each sentence a bitter reminder of what he has sacrificed. I remember when he was a different man, a man who laughed, who loved, who breathed deeply the scent of life. Now? Now he's just a ghost, lost in the echoes of his own making. "I remember when we were whole," he murmurs, a whisper barely escaping his lips. The shadows close in tighter, and I can see the flicker of fear in his eyes. "I remember," he trails off, the weight of memories pressing down, memories of camaraderie, of laughter, of the warmth of friendship that feels like a distant dream. It's as if he's grasping for a thread of connection, something to tether him back to humanity amid the relentless tide of isolation. Eleanor inches closer, her voice softening, but there's a steely resolve in her gaze. "You think power keeps you safe, but it only chains you. Look around you, William. Look at what you've become." Her words cut deep, sharper than any blade. "You're the king of a crumbling castle, a ruler of ruins." And she swallows hard, her vulnerability spilling out like a dam that finally breaks free. "I want to fight for us, for what we used to be. But you've locked me out. You've built walls so high that even your own heart can't reach you." "What do you know about walls?" he spits back, venom lacing every syllable. The bitterness flows between them, each word a bitter pill, a heavy weight that settles in the pit of my stomach. "You speak of isolation, yet you've pulled me into your chaos, into your madness. Your resentment, your weakness," but she interrupts him, fire igniting in her chest. "Weakness? You think admitting loneliness is weakness? It takes strength to face the truth. You think wearing your crown makes you invincible, but look at you, look at us. We're dying in this silence, William." Her voice rises, a crescendo of heartbreak and fury. And the only thing you've built is a fortress of solitude, a prison where you reign over shadows. The air thickens with tension, a palpable force that pushes against my chest. I sense the moment shifting, the world tilting on its axis as they stand at the precipice of something monumental. I grip the edge of the table, the splintered wood digging into my palms, anchoring me as I feel the weight of their emotion swirling around like a tempest. I don't need your pity, he roars, but I see it, the tremor in his voice, the flicker of doubt in his eyes. He turns away, and for a split second, I catch a glimpse of the boy he once was, lost in the shadows of his own making. The walls press in tighter, the air thick with unshed tears and unfulfilled dreams. I don't pity you, I pity us, Eleanor shoots back, her voice steady now, like steel forged in fire. You've lost sight of what matters. You're so busy holding on to your power, you've forgotten how to be human. Each word strikes like a hammer against glass, and I feel the vibration shudder through the room. The clock continues to tick, each sound a haunting reminder of time slipping away, of a moment poised on the edge of destruction or redemption. I catch the flicker of doubt in William's eyes, the sliver of vulnerability breaking through the facade. He's teetering on the edge, the weight of his choices pulling him into the abyss. Are you really willing to lose everything? Eleanor challenges, her voice now a haunting melody, soft yet piercing. Look at what you've built, power, influence, but at what cost? You're a king without friends, a ruler drowning in isolation. And still you cling to the illusion that power will save you. In that moment, the room feels electric, the tension a living thing that coils around us, tightening its grip with every heartbeat. The shadows swirl, whispering secrets of loss and longing, of dreams fading into oblivion. I remember, William whispers again, but this time it's different. There's a vulnerability in his voice, an admission that pulls at the very threads holding him together. I remember the laughter, the warmth, and now his voice breaks, and the sound resonates like a bell tolling in the silence, echoing a truth that reverberates through the very marrow of my bones. The walls close in, the air thickens, and I know this moment, this confrontation, will change everything. A storm brews on the horizon, a reckoning that waits with bated breath, and as their gazes lock, I can feel the world shattering around us, ready to either rebuild or collapse. And in that pulse of possibility, I realize, this is only the beginning. The moon hung low, a silver coin cast against the inky sky, illuminating the cold stones of the castle. I stood there, breath hitching in my throat, my heart a wild drum against the suffocating silence. The air crackled with unspoken tension, a storm holding its breath, waiting to release its fury. Shadows danced along the walls, whispering secrets that slithered around my mind, taunting me. Betrayal was not just an emotion here, it was the very fabric of the royal court, an unseen predator lurking in the heart of our gilded cage. Your Grace, the advisor's voice slithered through the chamber, oily and smooth as a serpent. I clench my fists, feeling the sharp bite of my nails against my palms. Lord Cedric, with his silvered hair and a smile that could charm the very stones, had never been one to speak plainly. Yet tonight, the glint in his eye, too bright, too predatory, made my stomach twist with unease. Trust, once a warm blanket draped across my shoulders, had become a shiver crawling up my spine. I've brought news, he continued, leaning forward, his gaze locked onto mine as if to ensnare me in his web. But I remembered the whispers behind closed doors, the way he laughed too loudly at my father's jokes, and how those same jokes had turned into daggers when they left the mouths of others. In the court, jesters wore the masks of fools, but the real jesters wore cloaks of silk and ambition. News of the rebels, he said softly, his voice a low rumble, they gather at the borders, stronger than we thought. My breath hitched, a gasp caught somewhere between fear and disbelief. The rebels, those fierce spectres of dissent, were more than just a threat, they were the embodiment of the very fears that haunted me each night. I felt the weight of the crown on my head, the very thing that made me a target, it was a thorny wreath, and I was suffocating beneath it. We must act swiftly. His eyes glimmered like shards of glass, and I could feel the heat of 1,000 unasked questions burning in my throat. How could I trust him? How could I trust anyone in this labyrinth of shadows? My stomach twisted again, this time with a rot of dread. And then there was her, Lady Isolde, my confidant, who had held my hand through sleepless nights and whispered dreams of freedom into my ear. She was the stark contrast to Cedric's calculated chaos, a beacon of unwavering loyalty. Yet, loyalty was a fickle mistress. I caught her eye across the chamber, and what should have been a warm connection felt like ice. Her face was a mask, painted with an emotion I couldn't decipher, and the fabric of our friendship began to unravel thread by thread. "Isolde?" I called, hoping for the warmth of her reassuring presence to banish the chill in the air. But she turned her head, her gaze slipping away as if I were a spectre haunting her thoughts. Betrayal hung in the air like a noose, tightening around my throat. I felt the phantom fingers of doubt tracing lines across my heart. Was she a spy for Cedric? A double agent weaving deceit with every smile? I remembered how we had shared secrets under the stars, how laughter had tangled our souls, but here in the cold, hard light of reality, it all felt like a cruel joke. The clock in the corner ticked loudly, each beat a reminder of the fleeting moments we had left before the storm broke. The weight of time pressed down, heavy and unforgiving. I wanted to scream, to tear the fabric of our little world apart. But the only sound I made was a strangled whisper, "What do you want from me?" Cedric straightened, the corners of his mouth curling into a smile that held no warmth, only the echo of triumph. "To protect your crown, your grace. To ensure we remain in power." Each word dripped with honeyed poison, wrapping around my consciousness like a vine threatening to strangle the very breath from my lungs. "And Isolde?" I needed to know. "Are you with him?" The question hung between us, a knife poised to sever the threads of trust. I felt my heart racing, the tension between us taut as a bowstring ready to snap. Her eyes flickered, and in that instant, it was as if I could see into her soul, the tempest swirling within. Her voice faltered, and in the silence, it echoed, a haunting reminder of the rift that had formed, an abyss I could not bridge. The shadows around us deepened, closing in, and I was left standing on the precipice of despair, caught between two worlds. I remembered the stories my father had told me of kings betrayed by those they trusted most. I remembered how he had laughed, scoffing at the foolishness of those who could not see the thorns among the roses. And here I was, just another fool, trapped in a court of serpents, unsure of whom to trust. With one swift movement, Cedric stepped closer, invading my personal space, his voice a low whisper. "You need allies, your grace. Trust me, or be consumed." The words hung in the air, thick and suffocating, wrapping around me like a vice. I felt the pressure of a universe teetering on the brink, the delicate balance threatening to shatter with the slightest breath. And in that moment, the air shifted. Shadows grew longer, the walls seemed to close in, and I could almost taste the betrayal in the air, metallic and sharp. How many times had I stood before this throne, cloaked in the illusion of safety? How many times had I believed that loyalty would triumph over ambition? I blinked, and the room faded into a blur as my mind raced, a cacophony of voices echoing through the corridors of time. I remembered the weight of the crown, the cool touch of the jewels, and the shimmering promise of power. But power was a cruel mistress, and in the pursuit of it, one could lose everything, even oneself. The confrontation loomed, a gathering storm on the horizon, and I stood there, suspended in a moment thick with tension, caught between the comforting glow of friendship and the chilling embrace of betrayal. The world beyond the castle walls felt like a distant dream, a threat waiting to strike, a truth that I could no longer ignore. "Choose wisely," Cedric said, the words a soft hiss as he stepped back, the shadows curling around him like a lover's embrace. I turned to Isolde, my heart a cacophony of love and fear, and in that heartbeat, I understood the fragile line we danced upon, a line where trust could either be a fortress or a tomb. As the echoes of the clock reverberated through the chamber, I felt the darkness closing in, ready to devour us whole. The night was alive with whispers, a ghostly reminder of the choices looming before me, choices that would shape not just my fate but the fate of a kingdom. The air pulsed with unspoken words, and I knew a reckoning was coming, and the shadows would not remain silent forever. Thunder cracked overhead, the dark clouds swirling like the chaos unfurling in the ancient hall. I stood amid the remnants of a once great kingdom, the air thick with the stench of betrayal and blood. They say the decisions we make ripple through time like stones thrown into a lake, but no one ever warned me that those ripples could drown entire worlds. Your Grace, the time has come. The urgency in the voice of my advisor, Elira, struck me like a dagger to the heart. She was a woman of steel wrapped in a fragile shell, her eyes a stormy sea of desperation. I could see it then, the way she trembled, but not from fear. No, hers was the tremor of a soul tethered to a decision that could shatter lives. I felt the weight of the crown pressing down like a noose, tightening with every pulse of my racing heart. I remember the stories of kings and queens who'd sat on this very throne, their legacies etched into history, their decisions marking the scrolls of time like blood on parchment. But what if their choices were nothing more than a cruel jest played by fate? I looked at Elira, and in that moment, I recalled something she had said long ago: every choice has a cost, and we must be ready to pay it. As we stood in that flickering torchlight, shadows danced on the walls, weaving tales of glory and despair. The kingdom was on the brink of war, a war ignited by a single ill-timed word, a careless whisper that had spiraled out of control. My thoughts raced back to that fateful gathering, where laughter had filled the air, mingling with the scent of roasted meat and spiced wine. I had felt invincible, surrounded by allies, each of them grinning like fools. Yet, as I spoke, the words tumbled out, careless and loud, consuming everything in their path. "Do you think them worthy of our trust?" I had asked, pointing to the coalition. "Let us not dance with wolves." The laughter had turned cold, the air thick with tension. I remember the faces, too, a mix of support and trepidation. Some nodded, but others flinched, as if they had stepped over a precipice into an abyss. Now, I could hear the echoes of my own voice, mocking me with every repeat of those words. The wolves were at our door, claws sharp and teeth glistening with the promise of violence. And my hand that once held the chalice of camaraderie, now trembled on the hilt of a sword I was too afraid to draw. "Your Grace?" Elira's voice cracked, pulling me back to the present. The urgency in her tone fueled a fire within me. I couldn't let this moment slip through my fingers like so much sand. We must act. The enemy grows bolder with each passing hour. But what if our actions only deepened the chasm? What if I was leading us into a night from which there would be no dawn? I could see the fear in Elira's eyes, a mirror reflecting my own turmoil. Decisions were not merely choices, they were a ledger of souls, a balance between glory and ruin. Then there was Corin, my brother, who had always been the light to my dark. He had stood beside me, a warrior forged in loyalty and love. But love can twist, and loyalty can warp, and I knew that beneath his steadfast exterior lay a churning sea of doubt. "You speak of wolves? What of the serpents in our midst?" he had warned me, his brow furrowed with concern. "We must tread carefully, for even the gentlest of whispers can poison the hearts of men." Now, as I faced the reality of my decisions, I could almost hear his voice echoing in the back of my mind. Was I a king or a fool? I had brought us to the brink. I had set the stage for a war that would claim lives, his life. I squeezed my eyes shut, willing the ghosts of my past to silence. "Your Grace!" Elira's voice sliced through the haze of regret, sharper than any sword. "We haven't time for doubt. The council awaits." Her urgency ignited something within me, a spark of defiance against the encroaching darkness. I drew in a breath, the taste of ash and smoke heavy on my tongue. I would not let my mistakes define us. I would not let my brother's fears become prophecy. I stepped toward the grand hall, where the council gathered in a cacophony of voices, each one a reminder of my failure. And yet, as I moved through the door, I felt the pulse of my kingdom beneath my feet, a heartbeat fighting to survive. With every step, I recalled those moments, the laughter, the whispers, the choices that had led me here. Silence! My voice rang out, raw and unyielding. All eyes turned to me, expectant and fearful. My heart thundered in my chest, a war drum calling forth the courage buried deep within. We stand at a crossroads. Decisions made in fear lead to ruin. But decisions made in strength can forge a new path. I saw Corin's face, a mixture of hope and anguish, and I remembered. I remembered the childhood promises made between brothers, the dreams of glory and honor. The clock of fate was ticking, and we were the architects of our destiny. And yet, the shadows lurked, waiting to consume us if we faltered. As I spoke, my words collided with the air, each syllable a battle cry against the chaos. The council leaned in, breaths held, and in those moments of shared uncertainty, I felt a connection, woven through our fears and doubts, binding us together against the storm. But would it be enough? Would my decisions alter the course of our kingdom for better or worse? The weight of that question hung in the air, a shroud of uncertainty as thick as the darkness outside. And yet, beneath it all, a flicker of resolve ignited in my chest. "Let us choose the legacy we wish to create," I implored, my voice steady despite the storm brewing within. In that instant, time itself stretched, and I could feel the weight of history pressing in around us, an invisible hand guiding our fates. We were on the edge, teetering between ruin and redemption. The cost of our decisions loomed like a spectre, whispering in the shadows of our thoughts. And as the council began to murmur, I wondered if we would rise to the occasion or be swallowed whole by the very choices we had made. The answer lingered in the air, hauntingly elusive. The clock continued to tick, the storm raged on, and I stood at the precipice, ready to cast my fate into the abyss. What would be the cost? And would we ever learn? A chill wind swept through the castle, rattling the iron bars of the prison cell where echoes of despair hung like cobwebs. The flickering torchlight danced on the stone walls, casting shadows that twisted into grotesque shapes, embraces turned to grappling hands, whispers merged into screams. I was here, trapped in this moment, the air thick with unspoken fears and the metallic taste of betrayal. I remember the way it felt when he, the king, my king, looked at me, his eyes dark pools of sorrow and duty, promising love beneath layers of obligation. I remember the weight of the crown pressing down on his brow, the way it pulled him away from me, like a tide that drags a ship into the depths. I remember my heart breaking, not from the absence of love, but from witnessing its transformation into something monstrous. "Do you still love me?" I whispered, the words a fragile thread in the storm of our reality. The silence that followed was a slow, torturous unraveling, each second stretching into eternity. And then, there was Eleanor, the queen, her beauty sharp as a dagger, her heart a fortress built on the ruins of broken promises. She stood just outside my cell, her gaze piercing through the shadows like a sword cutting through flesh. I could see the desperation flickering in her eyes, a reflection of my own, two women bound by the same man, yet so different in our struggles. Love can be a battlefield, and we were both soldiers, fighting for an empire of hope that lay crumbling at our feet. "Let him go," she pleaded, voice trembling with a blend of anger and sorrow. "He doesn't belong to you." Each syllable was a step on a tightrope, balancing between fury and vulnerability. I could feel the tension crackling like fire in the air, an electric charge ready to ignite the kindling of our shared pain. But what if his heart was never mine? I shot back, venom in my tone, desperate to pierce through her armor, to find the raw, bleeding truth beneath. What if I was just a shadow, a fleeting moment in his life, while you were the light? The irony hung heavy, and we both knew it. The king was a puppet strung along by the whims of power, and we were merely players in a tragic play written by fate. The crown didn't just weigh on his head, it was a noose, tightening around our lives, squeezing love into something unrecognizable, something we could barely breathe in. I can still hear the distant clang of swords clashing, the echoes of battle drums reverberating through the stone corridors. Each beat was a reminder of the sacrifices made, not just of lives lost, but of hearts shattered, dreams abandoned, and the love that twisted into something grotesque under the pressure of a crown. Eleanor's breath caught, and for a moment, I saw her mask slip. "He'll choose the throne over us. He always has." Her voice broke on the last word, and I felt a surge of pity mixed with anger. How could she still love him? How could she still cling to the remnants of a heart that had been torn apart time and time again? I could feel the clock ticking, each second a reminder of the impending doom that loomed over us like a dark cloud. The guards were coming. The kingdom was on the brink of war. Sacrifices would be made, and the cost would be far greater than we could fathom. I could feel it, a palpable presence lurking in the shadows, whispering unspeakable truths into my ear. "Can you hear it?" I asked Eleanor, my voice barely a whisper. The sound of our hearts breaking in unison. She turned her gaze to the flickering torchlight, and I followed her eyes as they glazed over, lost in thoughts of a past that haunted her. I can't lose him, she breathed, and I knew then, with an agonizing clarity, that we were both trapped in a twisted net of love and obligation that bound us tighter than any chains. But the king, the one we both loved, was standing at the precipice of fate, his heart divided and fragile. I could see him outside, pacing like a caged animal, wrestling with the knowledge that to choose one of us meant losing the other. I could see the ghosts of decisions yet to be made swirling around him, whispering promises of power and the bitter taste of loneliness. I remember the way he swayed between us, like a pendulum caught between two lives, two loves, two sacrifices. The air thickened with tension as the distant sounds of conflict grew louder, a cacophony of betrayal and desperation echoing through the halls. Each heartbeat felt like a countdown, each breath a reminder that time was slipping away. The weight of the crown pressed down harder now, and I could see it in his posture, slumped, defeated, yet defiant. He was a man on the brink, caught between loyalty and desire, duty and love, a prisoner of the very throne he had fought so hard to claim. "I cannot choose," he shouted, his voice cracking like thunder, each word reverberating through the stone walls, vibrating in the air between us. "I cannot bear this burden." And then silence. A silence so profound it felt as though the world itself held its breath, waiting for the inevitable. I could feel my heart racing, pounding against my ribs like a war drum, a battle cry echoing through the emptiness. "Then we will choose for you," Eleanor said, her voice steady, a calm before the storm. "We will save you from yourself. To love in the time of kings is to embrace madness, to dance on the precipice of despair, where every choice is a sacrifice, every moment a step deeper into the abyss." And as shadows gathered around us, thick and heavy, whispering secrets of love and loss, the lines blurred between loyalty and betrayal, echoing through time like haunting memories. We were all lost, caught in the eye of the storm, and as the clock ticked down to the moment of truth, I could feel the world closing in, the crushing weight of what was to come. We stood on the brink, ready to plunge into the darkness, our hearts entwined in a tragic dance, forever bound by the sacrifices made in the name of a love that could never truly belong to us. Thunder rumbled in the distance, a low growl of a storm brewing just beyond the hills, while the air was thick with sweat and fear. The ground shook beneath the weight of impending doom, a battlefield caught in the throes of chaos. I stood, heart drumming against my ribcage, a witness to the madness that engulfed us. Men were shouting, their voices raw, desperation clawing through the fog of war, while the scent of blood mingled with the damp earth, a bitter perfume that clung to the back of my throat. In that moment, I saw him, General Myrick, the man with eyes like storm clouds, swirling with a fury that matched the skies above. I remember when he was just a boy, laughing with his brothers, dreaming of glory and honor. But here he was, the weight of command crushing his soul, haunted by the ghosts of decisions past. He didn't just lead, he bled, each choice a knife that twisted in the dark recesses of his mind. I could see it in the way he gripped his sword, knuckles white, as if holding onto some remnant of humanity in this brutal theater of war. "Fall back," he bellowed, his voice echoing across the field, commanding yet trembling. The soldiers hesitated, their faces twisted in confusion and fear, the glimmer of loyalty battling with the reality of survival. They didn't want to retreat, not when they had sworn fealty to him, but the enemy was a tide, relentless and consuming. I could see their resolve faltering like a candle flickering in a tempest. Then there was Elara, his sister, the one who had always believed in the goodness of people, the one who thought war was a game played with noble intentions. I watched her rush forward, hair wild, eyes alight with that burning mix of love and fury. "Mirek! We can't leave them. Not now." Her voice was a desperate plea, a thread of hope woven into the fabric of despair. But hope had no place on this battlefield, it was the first casualty of war. "Think of the lives we'll save," he shouted back, but the words hung heavy in the air, a lead weight sinking into the depths of their hearts. I could see her struggling to process the brutality of it all, the betrayal of their shared childhood dreams against the stark reality unfolding before them. She was caught in a web of loyalty and fear, and with every heartbeat, the tension curled tighter around her. The rumble of thunder morphed into the clash of metal, swords meeting flesh, screams slicing through the air. I remember the chaos, the visceral fear that wrapped around my throat, choking me. Mirek, his face twisted, was both tyrant and hero, bound by duty yet suffocated by remorse. Each swing of his sword was a moment stolen from his soul, and Ilara's cries cut deeper than any wound. "Come back! Come back!" Her voice a haunting echo, a siren song that resonated in the hollow chambers of my heart. And then, amid the cacophony, I found myself in the past, a memory of laughter, the three of us under the stars, a promise made beneath the vast, unyielding sky. "One day, we'll change the world," Mirek had said, his eyes bright with ambition. But what did we know then? What did we understand of the cost? The weight of that promise loomed larger than the impending storm, and I felt it crack against the walls of my mind, a thunderclap of realization. With every moment, the battlefield threatened to swallow us whole. Mirek's eyes darted around, a predator cornered, seeking an escape from the very trap he had set, a decision made, lives torn apart. I watched as he faltered, every hesitation a dagger to the heart, every choice a nightmare etched into his skin. "They will haunt you," I whispered, though I wasn't sure if the words were meant for him or for myself. The earth trembled again, a reminder of the cosmos watching, indifferent to our plight. Ilara lunged forward, pulling at Mirek's arm, the connection between them taut with unspoken words. "You're not a monster. You're my brother." The tears in her voice were the kind that felt like magic and madness, a blend of anguish and love. But the battlefield knew no mercy, no room for sibling bonds. It was a dance of death, and we were all unwilling participants. Then, just as the tension reached its peak, a silence fell, eerie and chilling, like the brief pause before a pendulum swings. Time stretched, and for a heartbeat, the world held its breath. I could see Mirek's resolve hardening, the flicker of a decision igniting within him, one that would echo through eternity. And in that silence, I felt the weight of our choices, the history we were weaving, fragile and desperate. We were not just fighting for our lives, we were fighting for the ghosts that would follow us, the whispers that would haunt our every step. "Run, Ilara," he shouted, a roar that shook the very heavens, as if he were pleading with the universe to intervene and spare them both from the horror that awaited. But the world around us was a tempest, and as she stumbled back, I could see the shadows enveloping her, the darkness creeping in like an unwelcome lover. Mirek's heart shattered then, the pieces scattering like leaves in the wind, lost to the chaos that surrounded us. I could sense the weight of his guilt coiling tighter, squeezing the breath from his lungs. The battlefield became a canvas splattered with emotions, fear, regret, anger, each color more vivid than the last, painting the reality of war, a cruel artist capturing the agony etched in every face, every scream. His final decision loomed, a storm beyond the horizon, and I stood frozen in time, caught in the delicate balance of love and duty, a spectator to a tragedy unfolding. The clock ticked, echoing through the depths of my mind like a metronome marking the rhythm of our impending doom, each tick a reminder that we were never truly free. And just like that, the silence shattered, replaced by the roar of battle, a cacophony of sound that became a symphony of despair. I remember the clash of steel, the cries of the wounded, the smell of death creeping ever closer. Mirek, Ilara, two souls caught in the relentless tide of fate, choices made that would haunt them long after the last sword fell. The storm rolled in, not just from the heavens but within us, all-consuming, unforgiving. In that moment, I realized that the true war was not just waged on the battlefield. It lay within the hearts of every soldier, every leader, every loved one left behind. Time would not stop, nor would the echoes of decisions made. And as thunder roared, a reminder that some battles never truly end, I was swept into the chaos, a witness to a fate written in blood and sorrow, an unending tale of conflict that would resonate through the ages. The night was thick with the scent of rotting fruit, a pungent reminder of the kingdom's decay. Shadows danced across the stone walls of the castle, flickering with the dying light of torches. In the heart of it all stood Queen Isolde, her hands trembling as she clutched a letter stained with ink and desperation. The ink bled like her heart, whispering secrets of dwindling coffers and rising debts. I remember, she murmured to the silence, when greed was a far-off spectre, not a gnashing dog at my heels. The weight of the crown settled heavily upon her brow, a cruel iron band squeezing her mind. She remembered the lavish feasts, opulence spilling over like wine from shattered goblets. They had danced around wealth as if it were a lover, but now it was a viper, coiling tighter, ready to strike. Across the hall, Duke Alaric paced, his mind a storm of betrayal and ambition. He had always been the loyal servant, the steadfast adviser. Yet loyalty had become a distant memory. They bathed once a year, he snorted, half laughing, half sobbing at the absurdity of it all. And still, they thought themselves noble. The irony cut deep, a jagged edge against his chest. His fingers twitched, craving the weight of coin, gold that could buy not just power but freedom from this gilded cage. "Your Grace," he called, voice taut with urgency. "The people are starving. The coffers are empty." Isolde's gaze flickered to him, a mix of disdain and desperation swirling in her eyes. "And yet, you linger, like a moth drawn to the flame," she shot back, though her heart thudded louder with each breath. The court had once been a theatre of excess, but now it felt more like a graveyard, the ghosts of outdated wealth haunting the halls. She could hear whispers, rumors of insurrection, of nobles eyeing the throne, calculating their next move like vultures circling carrion. The thought gripped her like ice, the chill nipping at her spine. "I remember laughter," her voice broke, trembling with regret. "I remember dreams of glory." Her voice pierced the air, raw and quaking, echoing like a prayer in the cold stone chamber. "But all we have now is this greed that steals our very souls." Alaric stepped closer, the weight of unspent ambition radiating off him like heat. "The people will rise against us, Your Grace. We must act before they seek justice by force." His eyes glinted with fervor, a wildness that made her pulse race with both fear and intrigue. Was this man, once a trusted ally, now a potential usurper? The question hung heavy, threading itself into the fabric of their shared turmoil. "I need not your counsel on tyranny," she snapped, but her conviction faltered. What was a crown without loyalty? What was a kingdom without trust? In that moment, the tension cracked between them like a whip, each laden word igniting the room with possibilities, betrayal, ambition, desperation. "I remember," Alaric echoed softly, his voice a low rumble, "when the banners of our house waved proudly over the fields of our ancestors. Now they are tattered, flapping like lost souls." He stepped closer, the air thick with unspoken desires. "But I can restore us. I can show you the way." Her breath caught in her throat, a mix of terror and thrill. The temptation of power danced just out of reach, shimmering like an illusion. At what cost? The question hung like a blade between them, sharp and unyielding. "Everything," he breathed, and for a moment, they were suspended in time, the heartbeat echoing in the abyss of choice. The castle walls seemed to sway, shadows elongating, the night outside whispering secrets of what lay beyond the horizon. Each tick of the clock felt like a countdown, a reminder that time was slipping through their fingers like sand. "I cannot afford to lose more," Isolde's voice trembled, tinged with the weight of her lineage. "I have sacrificed too much." Yet, the pull of Alaric's ambition tugged at her, a siren's call pulling her deeper into the churning sea of greed. And then, like thunderclaps in the silence, the door burst open. A guard, breathless and stained with mud, crashed into the room, eyes wild, the air crackling with panic. "Your Grace! They gather at the gates. The people demand justice." A new fear seized Isolde's heart, quickening her pulse, a stark reality crashing against the fragile hopes she clung to. She was not just a queen, she was a woman trapped in the iron grip of wealth and ambition. "Let them come," Alaric said, voice steel, eyes glinting with fervor that made her skin crawl. "Let them come, and we shall show them the true might of our reign. Or we shall meet our end," she countered, the weight of her words pressing heavily on them both. In that moment, she saw a flicker of darkness in Alaric's eyes, a hunger that scared her more than the mob outside. "Will you lead them to slaughter? To betrayal? Or will you stand beside me?" Time stood still as they faced each other, the air thick with ambition and fear, their fates intertwined like the twisted branches of an ancient tree, each a reflection of the other's greed and desperation. "I remember what it means to be noble," she whispered, desperate for the past. "I remember before we were swallowed by shadows." But shadows lingered, hungry and insatiable, ready to devour all that they were. And as the mob's distant roar echoed through the castle, the two stood at the precipice of a decision that would seal their fates. Would they cling to the threads of what once was, or would they embrace the greed that pulsed within their veins, trading honor for power, loyalty for ambition? And in that moment, within the shadows and the echoes of a dying kingdom, the clock ticked on, a relentless reminder that time was slipping away. The night was far from over, the darkness was only beginning. The air hung thick with anticipation, a silence so potent it vibrated like the taut string of a bow. I stood in the shadows of the grand hall, cloaked in the darkness, as the murmurs of the crowd slipped through the cracks of the heavy wooden doors. A low hum, a collective heartbeat, echoed the thoughts of thousands, hopes, fears, dreams, each one carried like a fragile feather on the wind. The king's throne loomed, heavy with the weight of a crown resting on a man too afraid to wear it. I remember the taste of dread lingering in my mouth, sharp and metallic, as I stood witness to a moment that would etch itself into history, a moment where the voice of the people would either elevate a monarch to divine heights or plunge him into the abyss. In the center of it all was King Aldrich, a man not born to greatness but thrust into it against his will. He was a tapestry of contradictions, woven with threads of arrogance and vulnerability, wisdom shadowed by folly. As he approached the edge of the dais, eyes glinting with uncertainty, I could see the ghosts of his predecessors whispering warnings in the distance, specters of kings whose reigns had crumbled like brittle parchment under the weight of public sentiment. His fingers trembled on the armrest, as if the throne itself was a living thing, ready to swallow him whole. Beside him stood Ilara, the Prime Minister, a woman whose passionate heart beat fiercely against the tyranny of tradition. She was the pulse of the people, their fervent whispers pulsing through her veins. I could see it in her eyes, a fierce light that flickered with the intensity of 1,000 campfires. She had her own demons, her past draped around her like a shroud, filled with the screams of those forgotten by power. Yet, she stood resolute, her voice unwavering despite the cries of dissent that rose like a tide outside the castle walls. "Speak to them, Aldrich." The words spilled from her lips like a prayer, both a plea and a command. But the king's heart beat erratically, a tempest of fear and doubt. "What if they turn against me?" His voice cracked, a soft whimper lost in the shadows, swallowed by the roaring tumult beyond the doors. "What if they bring my reign to ruin?" There it was, the dread of a king, haunted by the spectre of a populace turned rabid, driven by the madness of their own despair. The ghosts of rebellion danced in the air, their laughter echoing darkly in the corners of his mind. I remember the moment the doors burst open, a blast of sound and fury flooding the hall. The crowd surged forward, a living wave of desperation and desire. Faces twisted in anguish, eyes wide with a mix of hope and fury. The people were a living organism, each voice melding into a cacophony that resonated through the very stones of the castle. They were hungry for change, yet terrified of it. Their shouts were a symphony of chaos, a melody that reverberated through the marrow of my bones. Justice! Freedom! We are the voice! It was a stark reminder that a monarchy could be both a sanctuary and a prison. The king, standing at the precipice of power, was a man caught in the delicate balance between authority and anarchy. I could feel the tension thickening, wrapping around us like a noose. The townsfolk, once loyal, now felt like wild beasts ready to upend the very throne that had fed them half-truths and false promises. Aldrich's fear seeped through the air like a poison, and I could feel Ilara's frustration radiating like heat from a dying star. She reached for him, her fingers brushing against his arm, grounding him. "You must listen to them," she implored, raw desperation lacing her tone. "Speak your truth. You are more than a king, you are their hope." Hope. A fragile thing, yet so powerful it could ignite revolutions or quell them. Outside, the crowd roared like thunder, a primal sound that filled the vast emptiness of the hall. I could see faces in the throng, familiar ones twisted in anguish, mothers clutching children, men with vacant eyes that had seen too much. Each person held a story, an unspeakable pain etched into their very souls. They were not just subjects, they were living, breathing dreams, each one a flickering candle in the dark. King Aldrich hesitated, caught in the gravity of the moment. He was a man alone on an island, surrounded by the turbulence of public opinion, a storm brewing on the horizon. I could see the flicker of resolve in his eyes, a spark that dared to defy the shadows closing in around him. What if they reject me? He finally whispered, voice trembling. What if my voice cannot quell their fury? But the truth, as I felt it, was that it was not just his reign that hung in the balance, it was the very soul of the kingdom. The air crackled with electricity, a palpable tension thick with unspoken words. You must be the voice they need, Ilara replied, her voice steadfast, cutting through the chaos. Show them the man behind the crown. Show them you are with them in their fight. And then it happened, an epiphany, a moment of clarity. I remember the moment Aldrich inhaled deeply, chest rising with determination as he stepped forward, breath quaking. The silence that followed was deafening. The crowd, a storm ready to break, held its breath. The king was about to become more than a figurehead, he was about to dive into the depths of his own humanity, risking everything for the fragile connection that lay between ruler and ruled. In that heartbeat of stillness, I felt the power shift, like the turning of a page in a book that had yet to be written, the ink still wet with possibility. It was a terrifying, exhilarating moment, a convergence of dreams and despair, hope and heartbreak, where the fate of a king and his people would entwine in an eternal dance. I held my breath, my heart racing, knowing that whatever happened next would ripple through history like a stone thrown into a still pond. And then, as his voice finally broke through the silence, raw, vulnerable, and filled with a frail strength, the first crack in the wall of fear began to form. I hear you, he said, and the world around us seemed to shudder with the weight of those words, a fragile bridge between a king and his people, trembling yet unyielding. In that moment, the past and future collided. The shadows of history loomed large, yet before us lay the infinite unknown, illuminated by the flickering hope of a people united. The air crackled with tension, the crowd surged, and I felt it, this was only the beginning, a prologue to a story that would echo through the ages. And as the voices of the people rose once more, a haunting harmony blending with the king's own, I could only wonder, who would survive the crescendo? The clock was ticking, its chime echoing through the cavernous hall like a death knell. Each strike reverberated against the cold stone walls, a relentless reminder that time was slipping away, each second carrying with it both hope and despair. I could feel the weight of my father's ambition pressing down on my shoulders like a shroud, heavy and suffocating. I glanced at my brother, his face a mask of uncertainty, eyes darting as if searching for a way out of this gilded cage, but there was no escape from our father's expectations, no sanctuary from the choices that loomed before us. Do you think he knows? I whispered, breathless, the words barely escaping my lips. The tension hung thick in the air, pulsating between us as the shadows danced across the walls like specters, mocking our fears. With every heartbeat, I felt the abyss widen beneath my feet. My brother, Jonathan, clenched his fists, the knuckles turning white, and looked away, the flicker of something dark and regretful passing over his features. No, he finally replied, but his voice trembled like a leaf caught in the wind. He can't know. He can't, but I could see it in Jonathan's eyes, the flicker of doubt, the gnawing realization that our father's relentless pursuit of power had birthed a monster in each of us. As the eldest son, I was the expected heir, the burden of choice was mine, but the chains of our shared childhood bound us tightly together. A bond forged in the crucible of our father's dreams, yet splintered by the weight of unspoken regrets. I could feel it, the specter of what we might lose, what we might destroy. Outside, the moon hung low, casting a pale glow across the courtyard. I remember the nights we'd play beneath its watchful gaze, a time when laughter echoed in the halls instead of whispers of treachery and deceit. I remembered the warmth of Jonathan's hand in mine as we raced beneath the stars, the world sprawling out before us, limitless. I remember the way our father would smile, pride glimmering in his cold eyes, how it felt to be wrapped in his approval like a warm blanket, before I realized it was laced with thorns. Are we really going to do this? Jonathan's voice cut through my memories like a blade, raw and jagged. Are we really going to follow in his footsteps? His words were laced with desperation, tinged with something darker, resentment, perhaps. I felt the pulse of our father's ambitions between us, a living, breathing thing that thrived on our strife and uncertainty. I don't know, Jonathan. Each word felt like a confession, heavy and laced with the fear of our choices. I want to make him proud, but at what cost? The clock chimed again, a guttural reminder that time was our enemy, and the stakes were rising. I could almost hear our father's voice, cold and commanding, demanding loyalty, demanding sacrifice. In the back of my mind, I recalled the night the world shifted, the night that changed everything. Our father had summoned us, his voice like thunder, dark and foreboding. Only one can inherit, he declared, his eyes smoldering with intensity, the rest must bow. Make your choice, my sons. The words hung in the air, a noose tightening around our necks. I could feel the phantom weight of that choice creeping into my thoughts, stifling my breath. A lifetime of rivalry, a lifetime of sibling love and hatred, all distilled into that one moment. The bitterness of betrayal tasted like ash on my tongue. Do you think it's too late? That we can still escape this? Jonathan's voice trembled, uncertainty weaving through his words. I took a step closer, feeling the warmth of his frustration, the chill of his fear. It's never too late, I said, more to convince myself than him. But deep down, the truth clawed at me, our father's ambition had already poisoned us. I could almost hear it whispering in the dark, weaving doubts like a malevolent spectre that would haunt us for eternity. The shadows lengthened, wrapping around us, and I felt the gravity of our choices pulling me deeper into the abyss. I wondered how many others had stood where we stood, trapped in the web of legacy, haunted by the ghosts of unfulfilled dreams. I thought of the moments of laughter, the warmth of family, before it all became a battlefield. I can't be him, Jonathan whispered, regret thick in the air. I can't follow this legacy of destruction. I saw the flicker of rebellion ignite in his eyes, a spark that could either burn brightly or consume us whole. It terrified me. I wanted to reach out and hold him, to tether us to something pure, something that was ours before it was tainted. Then what do we do? The question hung like a shroud, heavy and suffocating. Each moment stretched out, clinging to the silence as if the very air conspired against us. I could see the weight of our father's expectations, the chains he'd forged binding us to a fate we never chose. The clock struck again, the sound echoing through the hall, a reminder that our time was running out. I could feel the walls closing in, the darkness creeping closer, threatening to swallow us whole. In that moment, a decision crystallized before me, a choice that could either bind us together or tear us apart. The ghosts of our past whispered unrelentingly, weaving through my thoughts like a dark symphony. And as the shadows enveloped us, I realized that the greatest danger lay not just in our poor choices, but in the silence that followed those choices, the regrets that would linger long after the echoes of our father's ambitions had faded. I remembered the cost of love, the weight of dreams replaced by nightmares. In that moment, I understood, the true danger was not the legacy we inherited, but the burden of the choices we had yet to make. The moon hung low, a pale spectre creeping through the jagged slate of night, casting an eerie glow over the ancient stones of the castle. A raven called from the shadows, its cry slicing through the silence like a knife, a herald of death or perhaps a warning to the damned. I stood there, heart racing, caught in a moment suspended in time, as guilt wrapped its icy fingers around my throat. I remember the stench of burning incense mingling with the iron tang of blood, an offering, perhaps, to the gods who had abandoned us. Beneath the grand archways, King Alaric paced like a caged lion, his brow furrowed with the weight of sins too heavy for a man to bear. I watched him, every step a desperate plea for redemption, every furrow in his brow a reminder of the blessings he had squandered. His hands were stained, not with the blood of enemies defeated, but with the raw, unforgiving essence of betrayal, of vows broken on the altar of ambition. Where is the mercy? Alaric's voice cracked, reverberating off the cold stone walls. Where is the grace I was promised? He dropped to his knees, the weight of a crown pressing down like an anvil, and for a moment, I thought he might crumble into dust. His eyes, once alight with the fierce glow of ambition, flickered in the dim light, haunted by the ghosts of decisions made and lives lost. I remember the first time I saw him, his laughter echoing through the halls, a sound like silver bells, light and free. But that was before the war. Before the whispers of treachery wound their way through the court like a poison, before the shadows deepened and the light within him faded to a mere flicker. Now, he was a king shrouded in shadows, each breath a reminder of his failings, each silent plea to the heavens a testament to his despair. But it wasn't just Alaric who was haunted. His sister, Ilara, stood a few paces away, her figure rigid as if carved from marble. The flickering torchlight caught the glint of tears in her eyes, the desolation too overwhelming to contain. Beneath her fierce exterior lay a heart that had once brimmed with hope, now suffocated under the relentless weight of expectation. She had her own tarnished dreams, stitched into the fabric of her royal blood, a princess tasked with the impossible, a sanctuary for a king who sought the divine but found only guilt. "Alaric, we must act," she implored, her voice trembling like the last leaf clinging to a frost-laden branch. "There is no redemption in this despair. We cannot let our people suffer for our sins." But her words felt hollow as they echoed in the chamber, lost amidst the encroaching darkness. They had become mere echoes, ghostly remnants of what had once been fervent cries for justice. "Act!" Alaric spat, his voice a bitter rasp. "What can I do? My hands are tied by the very faith I once held dear." His eyes turned towards the vaulted ceiling, as if searching for the answers locked among the stars. But the heavens remained silent, indifferent to his plight. I remember the night the church bells tolled for the fallen, an unholy cacophony that rattled the very core of our souls. The people had gathered, faces pale and eyes wide, searching for solace in the arms of their faith. They had come to find hope, yet what they found instead was a king drowning in the very guilt he sought to purge. Alaric's failures became their own, and Ilara's silent pain echoed through the crowd, a haunting refrain that reverberated long after the last note faded. Time slipped through my fingers like sand, each moment a ghostly reminder of choices unmade, of roads not taken. I felt the weight of my own heartache, the shadows of my own regrets wrapping around me like a shroud. The air was thick with the taste of ash and desperation, a chilling reminder of the fragility of our lives. In that moment, the world outside faded, leaving only the pounding rhythm of our collective fears. "Remember when we were children?" Ilara's voice cracked through the oppressive silence, breaking the spell of despair. "When faith filled our hearts with dreams, and the world was ours to conquer." Her eyes, filled with longing, sought Alaric's gaze, but he turned away, unable to bear the weight of her unfulfilled hopes. "I remember," he murmured, the spark of his youthful vigor sputtering under the burden of reality. "But dreams are just shadows of what we cannot grasp. I am no king, I am a spectre, a wraith haunting the halls of my own making." The helplessness in his voice struck like a dagger, piercing through the darkness that surrounded him. The tension twisted and coiled around us, a serpent ready to strike. I could feel the world holding its breath, waiting for the inevitable collapse. The air crackled, charged with an energy that hinted at the confrontation lurking just beyond our reach. A moment of truth loomed, heavy with inevitability, as the clock ticked ceaselessly in the background, each chime a reminder of the passing time, the weight of our unfulfilled destinies. "Alaric!" Ilara finally cried, her voice fierce, but laced with desperation. "You are not alone. We share this burden. Let us face it together." Her hand reached out, trembling as it hovered in the space between them, a bridge over the chasm of despair that threatened to swallow them both. He hesitated, caught between the darkness of his guilt and the light of her unwavering faith. The shadows flickered like whispers, secrets dancing in the candlelight, drawing us into their dark embrace. Time spun, and I felt the air thicken with unspoken words and the weight of unfulfilled promises. With each heartbeat, I could sense it, something was about to shatter, an unbreakable tension stretching taut, ready to snap. And just as the clock struck midnight, the moment hung precariously, a tightrope walk over an abyss of fear and hope, guilt and grace, faith and despair. What happened next? The remnants of that charged moment lingered, for the world had not yet decided. The air crackled, alive with possibility, the shadows shifting as the tempest of their emotions swirled around us. And so, we waited, suspended in a breathless silence, teetering on the edge of revelation, our fates intertwined like threads in a tapestry, pulled taut yet ready to unravel. The room was heavy with silence, like a thick fog rolling in after dusk, wrapping around everyone present. I stood at the edge, my heart pounding, palms clammy. The air crackled with unspoken words, tension binding us tighter than the iron chains we wore. A single candle flickered, casting shadows that danced across the walls, haunting specters of our past, whispers of what once was. Just moments ago, we were allies, friends forged in the fires of necessity, but now we stood on the brink of something far darker. I remember the first time we met, Elena, with her fierce eyes and soft laughter, and Marcus, whose charm could light even the dimmest corners of a war-torn kingdom. We were young and reckless, arms linked in camaraderie, believing ourselves invincible. In those moments, the world was a grand tapestry, and we were the weavers, crafting our destinies with threads of laughter and shared dreams. But time is a cruel thief, and as the sun dips behind the horizon, it leaves only shadows, regrets, and the cold bite of betrayal. Why? The word hung in the air, a desperate plea, as I met Marcus's gaze. He was once my brother in arms, but now he stared back as a stranger, heart closed off like a fortified castle. I remembered promising him the world, and now, here we were, standing at the edge of it, watching it crumble to dust. The flickering candlelight caught the glint of steel in his eyes, the remnants of a friendship I once cherished. Elena stepped forward, her voice a tremor against the heavy silence. "We can still fix this," she implored, her hands trembling, a silent admission of the turmoil within her. The weight of her words was a double-edged sword. I could feel the hope coiling around us like a noose. "We can come together, just like before." The irony was suffocating. How could we come together when our very foundations were crumbling? Regret seeped into the cracks of our alliance, festering like a wound left unattended. Each of us bore scars, both visible and hidden, and they whispered stories of loyalty turned sour, alliances forged in desperation rather than trust. I remembered the night we made our pact, a rusty tavern, the smell of sweat and spilled ale clinging to the air like a curse. We laughed, we swore, we promised to protect one another. And now? Now the shadows of that promise loomed over us like a vengeful ghost. "Look around," Marcus spat, his voice low and dangerous. "This isn't the same world we thought we could change." His words sliced through the tension, sharp and unforgiving. The truth cut deeper than any blade, it echoed through the marrow of my bones. I could see the ghosts of our comrades, lost to war, lost to betrayal, and in that moment, I felt the weight of their absence like shackles dragging me down. Every heartbeat was a countdown, a reminder that time was slipping away. I could feel the walls closing in, the air thickening, suffocating. Elena's desperation radiated like heat from a dying star, and I wanted to reach out, to pull her back from the edge, but instead, I stood frozen, trapped in my own regret. "We can't let fear dictate our actions," she urged, but fear was already clawing at my insides, gnawing at the edges of my resolve. "Fear?" Marcus scoffed, his voice rising, echoing like thunder in the cramped chamber. "Fear kept us alive. Fear is what made us strong." His words ignited something within me, a flicker of defiance. I remembered the nights spent under starlit skies, plotting our futures, our laughter mingling with the cosmos, as if we were destined for greatness. But now, those stars felt distant, their light dimmed by the weight of our failures. Strength without unity is a mirage. Elena's voice cracked, a raw edge that cut through the chaos. Her eye shimmered, reflecting both fury and sorrow. I could see the storm brewing within her, a tempest of emotions threatening to consume her whole. My heart ached for her, for the girl I once knew, bold, unyielding. The girl who believed in the power of our friendship. But as the walls closed in, I felt the distance between us stretching further. Every breath became a battle, every heartbeat a reminder of the choices we had made. I thought of the lives we had lost, the chaos that had ensued. What if we're the ghosts haunting our own future? I whispered, the weight of the question hanging heavy in the air. The silence that followed felt like a dark crescendo, a haunting acknowledgement of the rift between us. Marcus turned away, the lines of his jaw taut with unresolved anger. "Then we become the architects of our own doom." A shiver ran down my spine. How could we let it come to this? How had we become strangers, each trapped within our own spirals of regret? With every second that passed, the distance between us became a chasm, impossible to bridge. Elena took a hesitant step forward, the flickering flame of hope still alive in her eyes. "We can mend what's broken," she said softly, her voice a fragile whisper. But I feared that the threads were too frayed, too worn to hold. I looked into her eyes and saw the ghosts of our dreams, fading, flickering, vanishing into the night. Time ticked on, the shadows around us deepening, urging us to make a choice. The moment hung heavy, a fragile bubble on the verge of bursting. I wanted to scream, to tear down the walls, to reclaim our friendship from the jaws of regret. But in that heartbeat, I felt something shift, a realization, a fleeting moment of clarity. We've been fighting the wrong enemy, I breathed, a spark igniting within me. The tension shifted, a palpable current running through the air. In that shared silence, I saw the flicker of understanding in Marcus's eyes, the glimmer of hope in Elena's. Perhaps, just perhaps, we were not lost. Perhaps we could fight our way back. With our worlds collapsing around us, we stood at the precipice, the shadows clawing at our backs, and the flickering candlelight illuminating our path forward. But what awaited us beyond the horizon was shrouded in darkness, and the choices we would make would echo through the ages, leaving us haunted by the specters of our alliances. Friends turned to regrets, dreams turned to ash, yet still, the fire smoldered beneath the surface. The winds of change were stirring, the next chapter was waiting just beyond the veil, beckoning us into the unknown. The clock strikes midnight, its echo a haunting dirge in the darkened alley, where shadows dance like specters clutching the weight of 1,000 forgotten tales. I stand there, breath hitching in my throat, feeling the pulse of history thrum beneath my skin, a heartbeat so loud, so insistent, it drowns out the whispers of the city. The air is thick with the taste of dread, and I realize, we are the sum of our failures, stitched together by the ghosts of those who came before us. In this moment, I see her. Anna. She stands across the way, her silhouette carved against the flickering streetlight, eyes wide, haunted by the echoes of a past she can't escape. Once a brilliant historian, now a shadow of her former self, she clutches a journal, its pages frayed and worn, filled with the ink of lost souls. "We can't ignore them, Mark," she shouts, her voice trembling, raw with the weight of urgency. "They made their choices, and now we're here, facing the same abyss." Mark, that stubborn fool, stands beside her, arms crossed, brows knitted in defiance. His obsession with the past is a double-edged sword, cutting deep into the fabric of his being. The past is just that, past, he growls, his voice low, fierce. It doesn't dictate our future. But I see the flicker in his eyes, the doubt lurking beneath his bravado. History is a cruel teacher, and he knows it all too well. I remember, a cool autumn night years ago, when we first gathered under the soft glow of candlelight, laughing about the absurdity of medieval life. Can you imagine, I'd mused, having to bathe once a year? Romance must have been earthy. We'd laughed, but now, as flames of urgency lick at the edges of our reality, the joke feels hollow, a fragile laughter echoing through empty halls. But here, in this moment, the weight of our ancestors hangs heavy, each failure a stone dragging us into the depths of despair. Anna's breath comes in quick bursts, like the frantic beating of wings, and I can't help but think of the countless lives that have crumbled beneath the weight of their own choices. Mark, we need to confront it. We can't let their mistakes trap us. We have to learn or we'll be lost just like them. The shadows twist, and I can almost hear the whispers of the past, the cries of those who fell victim to their own hubris, the kings who sought power with bloodied hands, the lovers who let pride snuff out their flames. They linger, specters in the night, reminding us that history is not just a series of events, it's a living, breathing entity, a tapestry woven with the threads of our greatest triumphs and our most terrifying failures. History doesn't repeat itself, Mark snaps, the anger in his voice cutting through the tension like a knife. It rhymes. And we're not characters in a tragic play. But the furrow in his brow betrays him. History is relentless, relentless and unforgiving. I remember the night I learned about the plague, the way it swept through cities like a dark wave, erasing entire families, leaving behind echoes of despair. They thought they were invincible, I'd said. But the cosmos has a way of reminding us we're merely players in a grand, absurd theater. But here, in this moment, it feels like the world is holding its breath. Anna steps forward, her voice a soft tremor. What if we could change the course? Her eyes shine with a wild light, a desperate hope that cuts through the darkness. What if we learn from them? What if we don't have to suffer the same fate? Mark scoffs, but I see the flicker of intrigue beneath his frustration. You think we can rewrite the script? He challenges, the bravado cracking. The air thickens, a storm brewing within the confines of his heart, each pulse a reminder of the struggle that lives within him. I remember the stories of the great philosophers grappling with the passage of time, how they sought meaning in the chaos of existence. Maybe we're not meant to rewrite it, I whisper, feeling the weight of my own uncertainty settle in my bones. Maybe we're meant to remember. And there it is, the fracture, each of us caught between the shadows of disbelief and the flickering lights of hope. The city breathes around us, alive with the weight of history, and I feel it pulse like a living thing, waiting for us to either crumble or rise. The wind howls, a mournful wail echoing through the night silence. I can almost hear the ghosts of our predecessors, their voices intertwining with the rustle of leaves, urging us to heed their warnings. The fear tightens around my chest, a tightening grip. What if we don't? I murmur, the question hanging heavy in the air. What if we fail? Then we fail together, Anna replies, stepping closer, the warmth of her determination wrapping around me like a lifeline. Her gaze pierces through the shadows, igniting something within. But at least we tried. At least we fought. In that moment, the galaxy roars above us, a chaotic swirl of stars and forgotten dreams, and I realize, history isn't just a past we can't escape, it's a mirror reflecting our deepest fears, our greatest strengths. The cosmos seems to watch, waiting, as we stand on the precipice of a decision that could change everything or plunge us into darkness. Mark's resolve begins to falter, his eyes searching the depths of Anna's conviction. It's a dance, a test of wills, of memories, of shadows that refuse to remain silent. The weight of our history presses upon us, and I can almost hear the clock ticking, each second a reminder that the past is never truly gone. I remember the stories I once laughed at, tales of lost kingdoms and fallen empires, and it strikes me, laughter was our shield, a way to protect ourselves from the haunting truths. But now, in this fragile moment, the laughter fades, replaced by a spine-chilling intensity that binds us together, three souls intertwined, grappling with the echoes of the past as we stare into the abyss, ready to face whatever comes next. With each heartbeat, we stand on the edge of decision and consequence, ready to fight against the failures of those who came before us. In the shadows, the whispers grow louder, urging us to remember, to learn, to rise. And in that primal understanding, we take a step forward, leaving the ghosts behind, only to find that history, relentless and unforgiving, is always lurking just out of sight, waiting for the moment to teach us its cruel lessons again. The air crackles with tension as the clock strikes midnight, an ominous toll that reverberates through the stone halls of the castle, echoing like a heartbeat, heavy and fraught with dread. I can almost taste the fear, a metallic tang that clings to the back of my throat, making it hard to breathe. Somewhere in the shadows, secrets writhe, dark, twisted whispers waiting to be unearthed, and I stand at the edge of it all, caught in the web of royal disgrace. Did you hear? The voice quakes through the corridors, a hushed urgency, almost a prayer. The Duke is missing. They found the bloodstains. Bloodstains. In this world of opulence and silk, where laughter rings through gilded halls, the sight of crimson streaks on stone floors is as jarring as a slap. It pulls at the heart, a reminder that beneath the layers of courtly charm, darkness festers like a wound that refuses to heal. I remember the Duke, a man of charm, with a smile that could light up the dankest corners of our world. Yet, even smiles can hide knives. I remember the way his laughter danced through the air, masking the tension that lay beneath, a tightly coiled spring ready to snap. The whispers began softly, an affair, a betrayal, the kind of gossip that clings to you like a shadow. But the shadows grow, don't they? They stretch, they breathe, they take form until they loom over everything, suffocating in their weight. And then there's Isabel, the Duchess, a woman who wears her grief like a crown, heavy and unyielding. She stands in the candlelight, fingers trembling as she clutches a letter stained with her husband's ink, now a record of his deceptions. He promised me the stars, she murmurs, her voice a broken melody. But he was only ever interested in the moonlight of others. Her eyes are pools of sorrow, reflections of a soul torn apart by betrayal. I want to reach out, I want to hold her, but the distance between us is vast, a chasm carved by trust shattered. In the corners of the room, other voices swirl like ghosts, each one a reminder of the price of ambition. Lord Alden, with his hawk-like gaze, stands watching, calculating. His ambition glimmers like a dagger in the dark. "You know he was weak, Isabel," he says, his words dripping with false sympathy. "You deserve better than a man who cannot protect his own." My gut twists. Does he care for her, or is he merely a vulture, waiting to swoop in on the carrion of her heart? I remember nights spent cloaked in silks and whispers, dancing on polished floors, laughing at the absurdity of it all. But now those nights feel like a cruel joke, each laugh echoing back with the weight of betrayal. The ghosts of our pasts haunt us, memories that flicker and fade but never fully vanish. "Isabel," I whisper, desperately trying to pull her back from the edge of despair. "There are worse things than blood. Look at the people who've lost everything: wealth, power, love. They lie in graves adorned with nothing but their regrets." But she doesn't hear me. She's lost in the storm, a shipwreck tossed by waves of sorrow. And then the doors crash open, splintering the air, and there he is. The Duke, alive, but something in his eyes is hollow, a shell of the man we knew. He stumbles in, shoulders hunched, the weight of his own darkness dragging him down. "It wasn't me," he cries, desperation clawing at his throat. "I didn't kill him." But the truth slithers in the air, thick and suffocating. I can feel the tension tightening around us, wrapping its fingers around our throats. The Duke's voice trembles, cracked and splintered, as though he's just realized he's trapped in a web of his own making. "I was framed," he howls, but the words hang, heavy and unconvincing, like a wet cloak on a stormy night. Isabel's gaze pierces through him, a storm brewing in the depths of her heart, and for a moment, I see her resolve crystallize, her pain morphing into something monstrous. "You would betray me for power." Her voice is a whisper, but it cuts through the air sharper than a knife. "You turned your back on our love, our vows." Every syllable drips with anguish, and I can feel the weight of her heartbreak pressing down on me, squeezing until I can barely breathe. "You think this is about you?" he snaps, the desperation in his voice turning to venom. "I was trying to protect you. Protect our family." But the words ring hollow, an echo of past lies. And then, just like that, the tension explodes. Isabel lunges, her hands balled into fists, and I realize she's ready to fight. I want to scream, to pull her back from the edge of this madness, but the energy crackles, and the air hums with the anticipation of their clash. "This isn't a game," she shouts, and I can see that she's no longer the fragile woman standing in candlelight. She's a warrior cloaked in heartbreak, ready to reclaim her narrative from a man who has wielded her love like a weapon. In that moment, the world outside, beyond the castle walls, fades into nothing. The city sleeps, unaware of the storm brewing within these ancient stones. Outside, the night is still, but inside, chaos reigns. The weight of history presses down as we stand at the precipice, questioning everything we thought we knew, tethered to a past we cannot escape. I feel my heart race, each beat a reminder of what's at stake. A future dangles on a thread, fragile and delicate. The air is thick, no longer just a space filled with anxiety, but a living entity, pressing against our skin, pushing us toward the edge. I glance at Isabel, her eyes aflame with a fury that might just burn the entire kingdom to the ground, and then at the Duke, a man unraveling, the mask of charm slipping away to reveal the raw, jagged truth beneath. In this moment, as their worlds collide, I understand the haunting reality of our existence, royalty wrapped in scandal, love intertwined with deceit, and the consequences of choices made in the dark. The clock ticks on, echoing a heartbeat of time slipping away, and we stand at the eye of the storm, where the darkness whispers and the chaos beckons, an intoxicating dance that promises no resolution, only more questions and even deeper shadows. The thunderous hooves of the warhorses thundered in the distance, a jarring reminder of what lay ahead. Shadows danced on the cobblestones as the sun dipped beneath the horizon, painting the sky in a blood-red hue, as if the heavens themselves were bleeding for the sins of kings. I stood there, heart racing, the chill of the evening air settling in my bones. The throne room, so grand and imposing, felt like a tomb, heavy with the weight of past decisions that echoed like ghosts in the corridor. Kings, they say, are born of steel and blood, but what of their hearts? What of their dreams? I remember the first time I saw King Alaric's face twisted in anguish, the lines of worry etched deep into his brow, like scars of a battle fought long ago. The weight of his ancestors pressed down upon him, a suffocating cloak of expectation that made his every breath feel like a betrayal. "You think this is power?" he whispered to me, his voice a low growl that vibrated with barely contained rage. "This is a prison." There he stood, the mightiest of men, yet vulnerable, like a flower caught in a tempest. I could see it in his eyes, the fear of becoming nothing, of being measured only by his legacy of bloodshed and tyranny. I watched as he paced, his hands clenching and unclenching, a habit formed from years of grappling with the ghosts of kings long dead. They haunted him, these spectres, whispering of glories past, of battles won at a cost too high to fathom. "What will they say of me?" he continued, as if the very question could unravel the fabric of fate itself. And then there was Lady Isolde, her laughter like music, but tinged with something darker. She was a tempest in a gown, a storm of contradiction. I remember her standing by the window, her silhouette framed against the dim light, eyes bright but haunted. "He'll fail," she said, her voice betraying a deep-seated fear. "The crown is a curse, not a crown." She believed in the power of love, the strength of unity, yet here she was, in love with a king destined to chase shadows. "Why do you care?" Alaric snapped, the words spilling out like venom, sharp and swift. "You don't understand, none of you do. The throne demands sacrifice." His voice cracked, and I held my breath, caught in the moment, suspended between hope and despair. His rage was a tempest, but beneath it lay a deep, aching sorrow, the knowledge that every choice he made would reverberate through the ages, each act chiseling his name into the annals of history, for better or worse. I remember, the night the clock tower chimed, its echoes reverberating through the castle like an ominous warning. One chime for peace, two for war. Alaric's face paled as he turned to Isolde, their eyes locking in a silent pact. "You won't leave me," he pleaded, desperation woven into each syllable. "Don't turn your back on me." The weight of unspoken promises hung thick in the air, a fragile thread ready to snap at any moment. As the night deepened, the tension twisted tighter, an iron band around my chest. My heart raced, each beat a reminder of the fleeting nature of life, the fragility of dreams. "I remember my father," Alaric murmured, his voice barely a whisper. "He taught me to rule, but never how to live." The vulnerability in his voice sent shivers down my spine. Kings are not born from love, they are forged from iron, steel, and blood, with hearts encased in ice. And the ghosts, they lingered, whispering their secrets into the void, each tale a reminder of the price of power. I could almost see them, the faces of those who had come before Alaric, each one a testament to ambition, betrayal, and the heavy burden of legacy. They stood as sentinels, watching, waiting, as if they could influence the choices of the living. "What will you leave behind?" they seemed to ask, their voices ghostly whispers carried by the wind. Alaric's shoulders sagged under the weight of their judgment. "I cannot fail," he said, the words a prayer more than a declaration. "Not again." But what if failure was woven into the very fabric of his reign? What if the legacy he sought to forge was destined to be stained by the blood of innocence? I watched as the horizon swallowed the last vestiges of light, the moon rising like a spectre, casting an eerie glow upon the castle. The shadows grew long, enveloping us in their embrace, echoing the uncertainty that gripped our hearts. What if I become the villain? Alaric's voice trembled, his mask of strength slipping, revealing the terrified boy beneath. Isolde stepped closer, her touch gentle yet firm. "Then be the hero," she urged, her words like a balm on his tortured soul. "Rewrite the story. You have the power to change the narrative." But could he? Could any king? Or were they all doomed to repeat the cycle of violence and bloodshed, forever chasing a legacy that felt always just out of reach? Outside, the war horses stomped, their breath fogging in the chill of the night. A chill of inevitability settled in my bones. I realized, in that moment, that kings do not stand alone, they are encased in a web of aspirations, fears, and expectations. Each heartbeat was a reminder of the stories yet to be told, the battles yet to be fought, the legacies yet to be forged. And as the clock struck, the echoes filled the air, a haunting reminder of time's relentless march. Alaric looked to the horizon, where shadows danced, where destinies intertwined. "I remember," he whispered, his voice trailing off into the night, swallowed by the silence that lay heavy and oppressive, like a shroud of uncertainty draped over our souls. The burden of legacy hung in the air, a tangible presence as potent as the promise of the dawn. The questions lingered, unanswered, as we stood on the precipice of fate, the weight of our choices pressing down upon us, like a storm brewing beneath the surface, waiting for the right moment to unleash its fury. The world outside was a cauldron of chaos, and inside, hearts beat as one, each pulse echoing the struggle of kings, of love, of legacy, an eternal dance, trapped in time, waiting for the next act to unfold. The clock ticks ominously, a relentless metronome echoing through the dimly lit conference room. I can almost hear the whispers of past decisions clawing at my mind, gnawing at the edges of my sanity. The air is thick with tension, palpable, suffocating, a prelude to the storm that's about to erupt. My heart races, a wild drum echoing against the walls, urging me to act, to scream, to break the silence that suffocates. Sarah stands rigidly across the table, her eyes glistening with an intensity that could ignite the very air between us. I remember when she was full of hope, laughter spilling from her lips like sunlight breaking through the darkest clouds. Now, she's a shadow of that person, a ghost trapped in the labyrinth of her own making. I watch as she clenches her fists, her knuckles turning white, the embodiment of unspoken regret, of dreams slowly withering under the weight of expectations. "You promised, Jack," she hisses, her voice sharp enough to cut through the thick tension. "You promised we wouldn't end up like this." I remember the night we made that promise, the laughter that danced between us, so alive, so hopeful. But the cosmos had other plans. I can feel the weight of my decisions crashing against me like waves on a stormy shore. The regret isn't just a feeling, it's a living, breathing beast sitting on my chest, squeezing the life from me. "I know," I reply, each word a stone thrown into the abyss of our shared despair. "I thought what?" She cuts me off, and the heat of confrontation ignites the air. "Thought you could play God? That we could control everything?" Her voice spirals, a tempest of frustration and sorrow, and I can see the memories flickering like candles, decisions made in haste, dreams sacrificed for a future that never arrived. Paul stands to the side, a silent observer, but I know he's a riot of emotions beneath his calm exterior. He was always the one who kept us grounded, the voice of reason. But today? Today, his eyes are heavy with disappointment, a storm brewing beneath his placid surface. I can see him shifting, uncomfortable, as if he were caught between the weight of reality and the chains of nostalgia. "We need to focus," he finally interjects, his voice steady but laced with an urgency that makes my skin crawl. "This isn't helping." "Not helping." Sarah shoots back, her voice a dagger. "You can't just dismiss the fact that we're standing on the edge of ruin." Each word drips with venom, and I wonder when hope transformed into this aching void, this endless cycle of blame and regret. I want to scream, to unleash the chaos brewing inside me, but instead, I breathe deeply, grounding myself in the moment, in the pain. I remember the moment when everything changed, the board meeting that spiraled into chaos, the decisions that seemed so innocent at the time. It's haunting, like a spectre lurking in the shadows, whispering of what could have been. I remember the faces of those who trusted us, the hopes we dashed against the jagged rocks of our inexperience. "You think I wanted this?" I finally muster, my voice cracking under the weight of my own frustration. "I didn't ask for it." "None of us did." Silence. Heavy, suffocating silence. It swells around us, an invisible tide pulling us deeper into the abyss. Paul takes a step forward, his expression a mask of sorrow and resolve. "We can change things," he offers, his voice a whisper thick with determination. "We can still make it right." But I can see the hesitation in his eyes, the flicker of doubt that sparks like a dying ember. The reality is, we're standing at a precipice, and the ground beneath us is crumbling, each choice we made now a jagged edge threatening to cut us down. The clock ticks again, a reminder of time slipping away, of dreams unraveling like threads pulled from a fraying tapestry. I feel the weight of my choices, each one a ghost haunting my thoughts, clawing at my conscience. There's a fear in me, a visceral terror that grips me tight. What if we can't make it right? What if the pain we caused is irreparable? I remember when we believed in something, I murmur, my voice barely above a whisper. When we thought we could change the world. I look into their eyes, searching for that flicker of hope, the light that once burned so brightly. But all I see are reflections of our failures, our regrets, swirling like a storm in the dark corners of their minds. The atmosphere shifts, the air thickens, laden with memories that suffocate our dreams. The weight of our decisions hangs heavy, like a noose tightening around our throats. I can feel it, the ache in my chest, the clenching of my stomach as I stare into the abyss of our tragedy. The realization settles in like a cold fog, we are not just leaders, we are haunted souls, forever marked by the shadows of our past. Maybe we were never meant to change the world, Sarah whispers, her voice breaking, and in that moment, I see the flicker of vulnerability. Maybe we were just meant to live in it, to endure. The words hang between us, heavy with despair, yet somehow freeing. I want to reach out, to grasp her hand and hold on to the remnants of our shattered dreams, but the gulf of regret is vast, a chasm we may never bridge. As I look around the room, I feel the weight of every decision, every missed opportunity pressing down on us like a shroud. It's terrifying, this realization that we are all just vessels of our own emotions, fear, hope, regret, tossed in the storm of our leadership. And then the clock chimes, echoing through the silence, a haunting reminder that time waits for no one. The moment stretches, pulling us into the depths of our emotional turmoil, and as I glance at Sarah and Paul, I know that we stand on the brink of something profound, a confrontation not just with each other, but with ourselves. This isn't just about decisions made or paths taken, it's about the very essence of who we are, the ghosts of regret that linger in the corners of our souls. The question looms large, an unending spectre: can we rise from this emotional wreckage, or will we be forever bound to the chains of our choices? And in the silence that follows, I realize that this is only the beginning. The storm is far from over. With each passing second, I can feel the universe shifting, and I know we will either stand united against our regrets or let them tear us apart. The tension coils tightly around us, a fragile thread holding the weight of our collective grief, and I brace myself for what's to come. The air hung heavy, thick with the scent of charred wood and distant screams. Shadows flickered under the pale light of a dying sun, casting twisted forms that danced upon the walls, each one a ghost of a memory not yet laid to rest. I stood in the heart of that chaos, my heart hammering like a war drum, the taste of ash bitter on my tongue. This was it, the moment that would fracture everything I thought I knew about redemption. "Help me, please!" The voice shattered the night, slicing through the inky blackness like a knife. It was Bella, her eyes wide, filled with terror as she clutched a small, trembling bundle to her chest. That bundle, my son, Theo, was the source of my nightmares, the reason I had torn my life apart in search of forgiveness. I had failed him once. I wouldn't let the shadows claim him too. But redemption comes at a steep price, and the currency is often blood. I stepped forward, the weight of every untold word resting heavily on my shoulders. "I remember when you were born, Bella." The joy of that moment was like a sun igniting the darkest corners of my heart. But now, my voice faltered, choked by the enormity of my own despair. I could see the flicker of doubt in her eyes, the question that hung unspoken between us. Could I really save him this time? Get away from them. A figure surged from the darkness, and I felt my heart drop into the pit of my stomach. It was Marcus, the man I had once called friend. His hands were stained with the sins of our past, and his eyes glinted with the madness of a man who had let his demons run wild. "You think you can just waltz back in, huh? After everything?" I didn't respond. I couldn't. The memories flooded back, relentless as a tide. I remember the night of the accident, the roar of the wheels, the taste of regret as sharp as broken glass. I remembered the silence that followed, suffocating, filled only with the weight of what was lost. I had promised Bella I would protect Theo, promised I would erase the shadows of our past. But here I was, drowning in them again. "Marcus, please," I croaked, desperation clawing at my throat. "This isn't about us anymore. It's about him." He laughed, a sound that echoed through the empty streets, tainted with bitterness. You think that's enough? You think that you can atone for your sins? You can't outrun the ghosts of what you've done. The world around us blurred, the shadows deepening. I could feel time slipping away, each second stretching out like a taut string ready to snap. Every heartbeat echoed in my ears. I will fight for him, Marcus. Even if it kills me. And just like that, the night erupted. Bella's breath hitched, and I felt her fear weave around me like a shroud. The air crackled with tension, and the universe held its breath, waiting. I lunged, barreling toward Marcus, the desperation fueling my every move. But he was ready. We collided with the force of 1,000 storms, our bodies crashing against the earth, the ground shaking beneath us like a judgment day. I could feel his fists raining down, each punch a reminder of every wrong I'd committed, every promise I'd broken. I remembered the laughter that once filled our lives, now twisted into something grotesque. I remembered Theo's first word, his first steps, the innocence that had been shattered by our recklessness. "Stop!" Bella screamed, her voice cutting through the chaos, but it was drowned out by the war raging between us. I could see her face mirrored in my mind, the joy, the laughter, the way her eyes sparkled like stars on a clear night. I wasn't just fighting Marcus, I was fighting the echoes of my own mistakes, the darkness that threatened to consume us all. "Why do you care?" Marcus spat, grabbing my collar, his breath hot against my face. "You were supposed to be there for him. You did this." I remember, I gasped, blood trickling down my brow, mixing with the dirt of the street, the remnants of my past. I remember what I lost. I remember every moment I've been searching for a way back to him. And in that moment, something shifted. The fury dissipated like mist at dawn, leaving only raw vulnerability. I saw it in Marcus's eyes, an echo of his own regret, a flicker of the boy who had once fought beside me. We were both haunted by the same ghosts, shackled by the choices we had made. Slowly, he released me, stepping back, his chest heaving. The fight drained from him as he stared at Bella, her eyes pleading. I didn't want this. Neither of us did, I whispered, stepping in front of Theo, my heart racing for a different reason now. The shadows loomed close, whispering lies and fears, but we were stronger together. We have to fight for him. We can't let the past win. Time hung suspended, like the world was holding its breath, and in that stillness, I felt a flicker of hope ignite. Maybe redemption wasn't an end but a beginning, a chance to rewrite our story amidst the ashes. But the cost was yet to be determined. The clock moved forward, the shadows retreated, and the weight of our choices lingered in the air like a promise yet to be fulfilled. I could feel the grip of something greater pulling us toward the inevitable confrontation that awaited, one last chance to atone, to reclaim what we thought was lost forever. And as the night deepened, I knew this was just the beginning. The price of redemption loomed ahead, a price we had yet to truly face. The air was thick with the scent of burnt feathers and spilled ink, the stench of a kingdom in chaos. A crown lay abandoned on the floor, glinting in the flickering torchlight, a mocking reminder of once mighty rule. The castle walls, now crumbling and festooned with the whispers of betrayal, echoed the pounding of footsteps, each a heart racing against the inevitable tide. The guards had always been loyal, but loyalty is a fickle flame, easily extinguished in the winds of change. I remember the moment they stormed the throne room. I remember the chill that crept up my spine as I stood there, poised on the precipice of despair, my fingers brushing against the cold stone wall, anchoring myself in a fading reality. King Edgar, a man of noble birth yet pitifully stubborn, paced like a caged beast, his eyes wild and desperate. "They cannot take this from me," he bellowed, voice cracking, revealing the panic beneath his bravado. Across from him, Lady Isolde, fierce and unyielding, stood like a tempest against the dim light. Her heart, once devoted to the king, now harbored a volcano of resentment. "You've blinded yourself, Edgar," she cried, the words tearing from her throat like a wounded animal. "The people are starving. They've begged for change, for direction, but you cling to your dreams of grandeur like a drowning man to a stone." I could feel the tension, the electric charge in the air, as if the very walls were poised to shatter under the weight of their confrontation. Edgar's jaw clenched, the muscles there taut with his refusal to bend. "I am their king. I will not yield to the whims of the masses." His voice thundered like a storm, but within it, I sensed the creeping dread of a man who knew he was losing control. The shadows danced with a life of their own, flickering in time with the turmoil. Outside, the cries of the people surged like a tide, resentment and discontent, a cacophony rising against the throne that had once been their sanctuary. The laughter of children playing in the courtyard now drowned in the chant of revolution, "Down with the tyrant." They were no longer just voices, they were a chorus of fury, a relentless tide that threatened to engulf the very foundations of his reign. I remember a time, long ago, when the castle's halls were filled with feasting and joy, a time when Edgar's laughter echoed like music. But now, the echoes of those days twisted cruelly in the air, taunting him. What was it they said? That time waits for no king? Time, that merciless spectre, had shifted beneath his feet, and he remained blind to its passage, clinging to relics of a past that no longer belonged to him. "Isolde, you know me," he pleaded, reaching out as if to grasp the remnants of their connection. "You know what we built together." The desperation in his voice was almost pitiful, a man grasping at shadows. But she flinched, and it cut deeper than any blade. "I knew a king who listened," she whispered, her voice trembling like a leaf in the wind. "But he's gone. This is not the man I once loved." The rawness of her admission hung between them, a chasm that could not be crossed. I could see the flicker of doubt in Edgar's eyes, the crumbling resolve as reality seeped in, relentless and cold. Suddenly, the door burst open. A soldier, breathless and ash-streaked, stumbled into the room, eyes wide with terror. "Your Majesty! The people, they're coming!" The words hung heavy like a noose, tightening around the king's throat. There was no more room for denial, no more time for grandeur. Outside, the storm was no longer a whisper, it was a raging tempest, ready to sweep him away. And in that moment, I felt the universe shift, stars dimmed, shadows lengthened, and in a heartbeat, I understood that this was not just a king's fall, it was the echo of countless others. Monarchs who had failed to adapt, who clung to their thrones like barnacles to a sinking ship. I could see them all, ghosts of ambition and pride, swirling through the air, each a reminder of the danger in stagnation. As Edgar turned to face the door, I sensed the weight of his desperation morph into something darker, defiance. He was a man cornered and unyielding, a lion ready to roar one last time. "No. I will not let them take me." His voice thundered, a desperate war cry against the tide of history. But Isolde stepped forward, eyes fierce but softened by sorrow. "You have a choice," she implored, her voice a fragile thread woven through the chaos. "Lead them instead of fighting them. Adapt, Edgar. Be the king they need." But the flicker of hope was extinguished as quickly as it ignited. Edgar's face twisted with fury and pride, the two battling in a storm of emotions that threatened to consume him whole. I saw the flashes of the man he could have been, a ruler of the people, a savior, but those visions faded into the shadows of his stubbornness. And as the shouts of the crowd reached a fever pitch, the echoes of history whispered their chilling warnings. There would be no redemption for a king who refused to listen, no sanctuary for a heart that clung to power at the cost of its people. The towers of the castle loomed in the background, dark and grim like the ominous heart of a beast. The moment stretched, time folding in on itself, and I felt an unbearable tension, as if the world held its breath, the calm before the storm. It was a pause pregnant with possibility, the final heartbeat before everything shattered. Each second pounded like a war drum, resonating through the very core of my being. I remember how it felt to be on that edge, standing witness to the unraveling of a monarch's soul, the chilling realization of fate marching forward, unstoppable and merciless. The clock was ticking, and with each chime, the weight of history pressed upon us, the ghosts of fallen kings whispering their tales of woe and regret. And there, in that darkened throne room, the grand tapestry of power began to fray, promising a spectacle both tragic and inevitable, one that would echo through the ages, leaving only lingering shadows of what was once a kingdom. The air was thick, suffocating, as I stood atop the crumbling battlements, the night pressing against me like a forgotten memory. The moon hung there, a silent witness to my turmoil, casting cold silver across the courtyard below. I could hear the faint rustling of leaves, the whispering ghosts of decisions long past. They clung to me, gnawing at the edges of my sanity, reminding me of what I had lost, what I had sacrificed on the altar of ambition. I remember the faces, their eyes filled with hope, their voices ringing with laughter, now silenced in the echoing void of regret. My kingdom, once vibrant and brimming with life, lay in tatters, a lifeless canvas of dreams never realized. The shadows danced like phantoms, mocking me, taunting me with the weight of my failures. Death was my only companion now, lurking in the corners of every thought, every heartbeat. I was a ruler, yes, but more so a regretful wanderer in a land I had desecrated. "You can't keep hiding," Lydia's voice sliced through the darkness, sharp and resolute. She emerged from the shadows, a flickering candle in the storm of my despair. Her dark curls framed a face marked by resilience and sorrow, the perfect contrast to my faltering spirit. "You have to face them. They need you." "Need me?" I scoffed, the bitterness creeping in like ivy over ancient stone. "What can I give them now?" "A throne built on the graves I've dug." My words were heavy, laden with a truth so palpable it nearly choked me. But she stepped closer, her brightness illuminating my gloom. "They need hope. They need a ruler who remembers what it meant to be alive." I looked down, the restless wind tugging at the hem of my cloak, pulling me back from the brink of despair. I remembered the laughter of children playing in the meadows, the warmth of a sunlit afternoon. But those memories were drowned by the cacophony of war, the cries of those I had sent into battle, lost to the blades of ambition. Each scar on my heart a reminder of a choice made in the name of power. "I remember," I whispered, my voice trembling, "the day I chose conquest over compassion." The ghosts of my past danced around me, whispering sweet nothings that twisted into venomous barbs. I remember the faces, the pleas, the blood staining my hands. "It's not too late," Lydia insisted, her voice a lifeline thrown into the tempest. "You can still reclaim what you've lost." But how could I? The clock of fate ticked mercilessly, each second a reminder of my frailty. Time had become my enemy, taunting me with its relentless march. I could see the shadows creeping forward, heralds of my own demise, and I felt the icy grip of mortality tightening around my throat. "Every decision leads us closer to the end," I replied, a hollow laugh escaping my lips. "I thought I was building a legacy, but all I've done is pave the path to my own grave." The night grew colder, the wind howling like a wounded beast. I could see in Lydia's eyes the flicker of understanding, a mirror reflecting my own torment. She had lost too, her brother, a casualty of my reckless ambition. Yet, she stood there, unwavering, battling the storm raging within me. "We all carry our ghosts," she said softly, stepping into the moonlight, defiance etched into her features. "But to face them is to find freedom. You don't have to be alone in this." I felt the weight of her words settle over me, a shroud woven from shared pain. "I thought power would ensure my immortality," I confessed, my voice barely a whisper. "But it only serves to remind me of my mortality." The wails of the past crescendoed, an unsettling symphony that reverberated through the stone walls. I sensed the spirits of the fallen urging me to make amends, to confront the reality I had so fervently denied. They lingered in the periphery, their presence palpable, a chilling reminder of the lives entwined with mine. "Look!" Lydia pointed to the horizon where the first rays of dawn broke through the darkness, a soft glow illuminating the path ahead. "It's not too late. You can still be the ruler they need, the ruler who learns from his mistakes." But I was paralyzed, caught between the allure of redemption and the suffocating embrace of despair. The ghosts of my past swirled around me like a tempest, urging me to remember, to reckon with the choices that had sealed my fate. "I remember," I muttered, my heart pounding, the moment I turned my back on mercy. The shadows grew heavier, wrapping around me like chains, each link forged from the guilt of my decisions. And now, the reaper waits, not for me to flee, but for me to finally confront the truth. A silence enveloped us, thick and suffocating. I could feel the heartbeat of the world, the pulse of every life connected to mine, and for a fleeting moment, I understood. The past would always haunt me, but it was not my only companion. There was still time, still a chance to rewrite my story, to break the chains of regret and embrace the fragility of life. Together, I finally said, my voice steady, a flicker of resolve igniting within me. We can face the dawn. And as the sun broke free from the shackles of night, bathing the world in a warm embrace, I took a step forward. Not away from my ghosts, but toward them, ready to confront the shadows that had haunted me for too long. The clock continued to tick, its relentless pulse reminding me of the fleeting nature of time. But in that moment, standing at the edge of my own mortality, I felt something shift, a glimmer of hope amidst the despair. I was ready to reclaim the pieces of my shattered soul, to face the echoes of my past and forge a future not defined by regret, but by the promise of redemption. And as the dawn painted the world anew, I knew this was only the beginning. The clock struck midnight, its echoes slicing through the stillness of the castle, each chime a reminder that time was merciless. Outside, the wind howled like a restless spirit, clawing at the stone walls, whispering secrets of regret, betrayal, and the ghosts of kings long past. Inside, King Alaric sat alone in his chamber, the flickering candlelight casting shadows that danced like memories he wished to forget. He stared at the parchment before him, ink smudged with the trembling of his hands, his plea for mercy to the very kingdom he once wielded like a sword. "I remember the day the crown felt heavy," he murmured, his voice barely a whisper. "I remember the laughter of my enemies, how it echoed through the grand hall like a haunting refrain." Regret wrapped around him like a shroud, each breath a struggle against the weight of his choices. In the depths of his heart, he could hear the laughter still, a cacophony of mirth at his expense. Across the chamber, Lady Isolde watched him, her heart aching for the man who once radiated strength. She wore her own burdens, the shadows of her past clinging to her like a second skin. In a world where ambition often drowned out love, she had sacrificed everything for him, and yet, the king she had adored now stood crumbling under the weight of his own remorse. "Alaric," she said, her voice trembling, "you must face them. You must rise from this darkness." But how could he? His kingdom was slipping away, his subjects muttering in the streets about the king who had betrayed them, who had taken more than he had given. "I remember the faces of my people," he whispered, guilt clawing at his throat. "I can't bear to see their disappointment reflected in their eyes. I am a king without a crown, a man without worth." Isolde stepped closer, the flickering light illuminating the tear tracks on her cheeks. "You are not your mistakes. You are not the shadows that haunt you. You are a king who can still make things right." But her words felt like whispers against a storm, powerless to pierce the tempest of his grief. Outside, the realm was alive with the murmurs of rebellion, shadows moving like phantoms, restless and hungry for change. Alaric could almost hear their cries, a symphony of despair mingled with hope. He could see their faces, a blurred mosaic of anger and desperation. What would they see if I stepped out, he thought. A coward? A king who bowed to fate? No, he thought, the weight of his regret pinning him to the ground. A king who had lost everything. In the farthest corner of the castle, a young scribe named Aemon listened, his heart pounding against his ribs. He had watched Alaric rise, and now, watching him crumble felt like standing in the shadow of a giant, a hero turned to dust. Aemon had once dreamed of glory, of tales spun in glory and laughter. Now, he felt the futility of it all, the absurdity of kingship. They bathed once a year, he muttered to himself, a bitter chuckle escaping his lips. So yeah, romance was earthy. Yet, he couldn't shake the feeling of dread that settled like a thick fog over the castle. "I remember the dreams," Alaric continued, his voice a fragile thread against the roaring wind. "I dreamed of peace, of a kingdom where laughter reigned." Tears threatened to spill, but he blinked them back, unwilling to show weakness. "Now, all I see is ruin." The candle flickered, casting a ghostly glow around the room, the shadows twisting and turning like lost souls seeking redemption. Isolde's resolve strengthened. "You are not alone in this," she urged, stepping into the flickering light. "You have me. We can change the course of our fate together." There was a fire in her eyes, a fierce determination that ignited something deep within Alaric, but the darkness inside him clawed back, heavy and suffocating. Change, he spat, the word bitter on his tongue. What good is change when the blood of my failure stains every stone? When my name will be whispered in curses long after the sun sets on my reign? Aemon, unable to contain his thoughts any longer, stepped forward. You think history is kind? It remembers the crown but forgets the man beneath it. It carves out a legacy of kings but leaves the hearts of those who loved them in ruins. But you, he paused, his voice cracking. You have a chance to change your story. To be more than a name in a ledger. Alaric's eyes bore into Aemon's, searching for something that could anchor him, something that could pull him back from the abyss of despair. And how do I face the ghosts of my past? He murmured, a desperate plea. How do I look into the eyes of those I have failed? By acknowledging them, Aemon replied, the weight of his words hanging in the air, thick as smoke. By daring to confront the very shadows you fear. You can't erase the past, but you can shape the future. That is your power. The room fell silent, the only sound the howling wind outside, which seemed to echo their turmoil, their uncertainties. Time stretched, a taut string ready to snap, and within that silence, possibility shimmered, a faint glimmer in the darkness. Alaric's heart raced, the tension was palpable, thick enough to choke on. He could feel the weight of the world pressing down upon him, but beneath that weight was a flicker of hope, stubborn and bright. What if I fail again? He whispered, the echo of his own fear ringing in his ears. Then you rise, Isolde said fiercely, determination etched into her features. You rise, and you try again. And in that moment, as the clock continued its relentless ticking, history hung in the balance, fragile, uncertain, waiting for a king to reclaim his throne, to confront the shadows, to wrestle with the ghosts of his past. The air crackled with a tension that felt like the calm before a storm, each heartbeat echoing against the walls of the castle, each breath heavy with the weight of 1,000 regrets. Time unraveled, a tapestry of moments woven together with threads of despair, love, and the desperate hope of redemption. Alaric stood at the edge of his own reckoning, the echoes of his mistakes reverberating in his mind. He faced his fears, the flickering candle casting shadows that danced like memories lost to time. Tonight, I will not be haunted, he declared, feeling the power of his own voice. Tonight, I will face my kingdom. And as he stepped from the chamber into the storm, the world awaited his decision. On the precipice of judgment, the weight of history whispered in his ear, urging him toward the final reckoning that would shape the legacy he would leave behind. The night deepened, and the echoes of kings past drew closer, eager to witness the rise or fall of a man who dared to confront the darkness. The moment rushed forward, an unstoppable tide, and Alaric, with Isolde and Aemon at his side, was ready to meet it.